Chapter 324. If that's the case, then all the Hall Masters can't be left behind. Lin Yunfeng was actually fighting for Liang Xiaoming's position. It was an excuse to pull all the Jidon stage masters. Since Wang Yong said that the Hall Master was the Hall Master, he naturally took the opportunity to settle this matter. Because Hall Master Hao Yu's judgment was unclear, the Palace Master and the elders unanimously agreed to punish him for 20 years. Wang Yong certainly knew what his grand disciple was referring to, and straightforwardly excluded Liang Xiaoming. It's not good to interrupt this. Lin Yunfeng frowned. This kind of opportunity is rare. Let him come out to watch the ceremony, and then go back to the wall. Okay? Liang Xiaoming's reflection on the wall was made public in the sect. Everyone knew that if he really wanted to support him, Lin Yunfeng was really not so righteous and could only use the tone of discussion to say it. Elder Lin, Hall Master Liang, made a mistake and was punished. Wang Yong refused to give in at all. He had just made a move on his own grand disciple, and now he wanted to get benefits. How could there be such a good thing? He directly denied it. If there are benefits, let them out first, take the benefits, and then send them back. Is this called being punished? If outsiders know, they will laugh at my Chunyang Palace. Speaking of reason, it was definitely on Wang Yong's side. Those who made mistakes and were punished saw that there were benefits. Let them out first to get the benefits, and then go back. This was not punishment. It was clearly a reward. As soon as this was said, even the palace master could not say anything more. Lin Yunfeng still wanted to argue a few more words, but the palace master had to sigh and said, "Senior brother Lin, Liang Xiaoming's matter should be handled according to senior brother Wang's intention. Those who made mistakes and were punished should not come out." But palace master, Lin Yunfeng was also anxious. Such a good opportunity, but he could not let his own disciple observe. It was really unacceptable. "Don't say it." The palace master directly stopped Lin Yunfei's words. "Although my Chunyang Palace is not one of the best sects, the sect rules are the sect rules, not a child's play. If everyone looks down on the sect's rules, how can we restrict the disciples of the sect?" The head of the palace put out the rules of the sect, but there was no room for maneuver. Lin Yunfeng could only shut his mouth sadly, but his resentful eyes stared fiercely at Yang Chun. Everything was caused by Yang Chun, including the fact that his own grand disciple Chu Hong had become a traitorous disciple was also thanks to Yang Chun. The enmity between them was getting deeper and deeper. While Lin Yunfeng was gloomy, the other elders could already tell that Wang Yong's bloodline, from the Grand Master to the Master to the disciple, were all people who couldn't bear to rub sand in their eyes. If one side was wronged, the other side would immediately seek revenge. The group of people were very fortunate that their relationship with Wang Yong's bloodline was good, especially those who had a good relationship with Yang Chun, such as the Medicine Hall Master Zhu Qintao, the Foreign Affairs Hall Master Su Qingxin, and the Law Enforcement Hall Master Meng Xian. They had such a lucky little friend. Even if they just benefited a little, it would make many people envious. Such a disciple must be protected with all their heart. Which disciple widened the main spiritual vein of the Chunyang Palace? Which disciple found a new spiritual vein and left a room for all of them? Which disciple got Elder Wu Xiong's cultivation experience and directly offered it to the sect for everyone to benefit? Which disciple had such an opportunity to observe the tribulation and did not forget to leave it for everyone? Who else could it be except Yang Chun? What merit did the Bright Moon Palace have to the sect that was worth taking out? In addition to enjoying the resources of the sect, when did they give so many benefits to the sect? They were not afraid of not knowing the goods, but they were afraid of comparing goods. When the two were compared, everyone could come to a conclusion. In fact, Hall Master Liang may have a chance. Just when everyone thought the dust had settled, Yang Chun unexpectedly opened his mouth. Not only that, but the words he said shocked everyone. What chance? Lin Yunfeng was overjoyed. At this moment, he did not care that Yang Chun was a junior and asked hurriedly, "Although this disciple has not seen the Yin Fire tribulation, I also know that during the tribulation, the fluctuation of the qi of heaven and earth is not limited to one place. I am afraid that it will affect hundreds of miles around my Meiqing mountain. Yang Chan said, as long as it is within the range of my Chunyang palace, it is estimated that this extraordinary spiritual power fluctuation can be felt. This was indeed reasonable, and everyone nodded slightly. However, Yang Chun did not finish and immediately said, this disciple has read some records of the predecessors. During the tribulation, if your cultivation is not enough, you can only avoid it from a distance. If you are too close and unable to protect yourself, I am afraid that you will be affected by the tribulation. At that time, I am afraid that the only ones who can really see the predecessor's tribulation are the elders. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression suddenly became better. These words seemed to give Liang Xiaoming an opportunity, but the opportunity was the same as not giving it. And the most important thing was that this remark eliminated the influence of Lin Yunfeng's previous proposal to let all the Jiedan stage masters manage it. Originally, Lin Yunfeng's words would definitely make other Jiedan stage masters have ideas. Even if they did not show it, they would have opinions on Yang Chun. But when these words came out, it was because everyone's cultivation was not enough and they could not get close at all. There was no chance at all. Who would complain that Yang Chun did not give them a chance? This was the logic, but the faces of the Golden Core Stage Hall Masters and Hall Masters changed. According to Yang Chen's statement, didn't it mean that they had no chance to observe closely and could only feel it from a distance? If the several Hall Masters want to watch it, it can't be said that the elders have to work together to protect it. Immediately after Yang Chen's words, several Jiedan stage masters were full of hope, and their eyes were all focused on the head of the palace. Everyone was excited before, but they did not think about this layer. After Yang Chen's reminder, everyone began to consider this issue. It seemed that these Yuanying stage elders in front of them, it was estimated that it would be a little difficult to protect the hall masters of the Jiedan stage. Not to mention the addition of Liang Xiaoming, just a few of them were already somewhat stretched. In this case, even if Lin Yunfeng wanted to add people, it was impossible. If Liang Xiaoming came in, someone must go out. Everyone had the same identity. Liang Xiaoming was still a person who was punished. How could he squeeze out the position of others? In this case, it can only be the elders plus everyone present. Lin Yunfeng could only helplessly admit that Liang Xiaoming did not have this blessing. However, he still grabbed another person. His own disciple did not have this opportunity, and this person could not do it. Gao Yu is not the hall master, and can't be counted, right? When Lin Yunfeng said this, he did not look at Gao Yu at all, but looked at Yang Chun. It seemed that he wanted to see Gao Yu did not have this opportunity, and what kind of expression would Yang Chun have? Of course, Yang Chun admitted indifferently. The elders only need to settle down a few uncles. Masters matter. This disciple will solve it. Chapter 3:25. Because there was no opportunity at all, Lin Yunfeng also fought for it with a thick face, but in addition to annoyance, he got nothing. The old tree demon was invited to come out, headed by the palace master of Chunyang Palace. Several elders also called the old tree demon a senior. The old guy, whether in terms of age or cultivation, was worthy of being called senior. Finally, under the discussion of the elders, the palace master accepted a disciple on behalf of the master. The old tree demon also became one of the most senior group of people in Chunyang Palace, and also served as the hall master of the Hall of Eccentrics. In this regard, Shi Kuei and Xie Sha had no objection. They did not learn how to fight for power. The old tree demon's cultivation was strong, and he became the hall master. The two of them were convinced. The next thing was that the elders began to prepare for the ceremony, how to protect more peak gold core cultivators, so that more people could share this unique adventure. Yang Chun and Gao Yu returned to Gao Yu's courtyard and cared about Gao Yu's injury. I don't feel anything now. Gao Yu faced Yang Chen's concern. Her face was slightly red, and then she replied with certainty, not only that, the cultivation of my spiritual awareness has increased a lot. After that, Gao Yu looked at Yang Chen with a worried face and asked, your spiritual awareness is greatly damaged. Will there be any problems? It's okay. It's just a matter of a few days of cultivation. Yang Chun certainly would not let Gao Yu feel guilty about this matter, and said with a look of indifference, "This time you have offended Elder Lin and the people of the Bright Moon Palace." Gao Yu's brows did not relax, and she said worriedly. But immediately Gao Yu patted Yang Chen's shoulder. "However, they have gone too far. You don't have to worry about it. If there is such a thing again, go directly to Master. Master will stand up for you." Wang Yong, Gao Yu, Yang Chen's bloodline, it seems that there is nothing else. It is responsible, even Gao Yu, a woman, said so, not to mention Wang Yong in front of Lin Yunfeng can't speak. This time it was obviously the people of the Bright Moon Palace who provoked him, and Yang Chun almost slapped them in the face. "You said I'll leave my matters to you." After saying that, Gao Yu turned her gaze to Yang Chun. "Do you have a way to let me watch the ceremony without being affected?" "Don't worry, leave it to me." Yang Chun patted his chest and promised, "I guarantee that it will be the first row." Gao Yu might not believe if someone else said it, but since it was Yang Chun, Gao Yu absolutely believed it. For such a long time, Gao Yu had a blind trust in Yang Chun, especially after the two spiritual awareness double cultivation. Gao Yu's feeling was even stronger. Of course, Yang Chun was not bragging. He went straight back to find the old tree demon and began to help him choose a suitable location. This place had to be in Meiqing Mountain, and once it failed, it could not cause any loss to Chunyang Palace. Of course, the possibility of failure was too low. The old tree demon could suppress more than a dozen fire tribulations out of thin air. With the doppelganger's secret art, he would never fail. This position also had to consider the benefits of the disciples of Chunyang Palace. At least the large-scale fluctuations of the heaven and earth yuan qi in the tribulation should be felt by most people, so the location chosen should be paid attention to. However, these palace masters would definitely consider it in more detail, so Yang Chun did not have to think much about it. He came just to confirm the time with the old tree demon and to make an appointment with the best location. No matter where it was, Yang Chun believed that there would never be a better place to watch the ceremony than the body of the old tree demon. However, the old tree demon's tribulation, unless he trusted the person to the point of being able to entrust his life to him, the old tree demon would never agree. But strangely, for Yang Chen's request, the old tree demon agreed. He didn't know if he really trusted Yang Chun so much, or if he felt that Yang Chun and Gao Yu, one in the early stage of the foundation stage, and one in the early stage of the Jidan stage, had no threat. Anyway, the old tree demon promised without hesitation. In less than a day, the Chunyang Palace knew the news. As long as it was within the scope of Meiqing Mountain, almost everyone was looking forward to it with excitement. It was a pity that the time of the old tree demon's tribulation was very fast. The next night would begin. Otherwise, many people would inform distant relatives and friends. Even if they couldn't see it with their own eyes, it would be beneficial to feel the fluctuations of the vitality. The location of the tribulation had been chosen, which was between the Nine Earth Mountain Villa and the Chunyang Palace, slightly closer to the Chunyang Palace. This location, after calculation, was the most suitable place, and the old tree demon had no objection to this. Including the head of the palace, no one discovered that the old tree demon who had been with them was simply an incarnation, not the real body. Shi Kuei and Xie Shan knew a little, but they didn't say anything. They just followed the head of the palace and the elders to arrange the appropriate protective formation, experience the mystery of the formation, and at the same time, learn silently. A day's time to arrange the protective formation was enough for the head of the palace and the elders to be busy, but everyone was very excited. This kind of opportunity was not available every year. The last time Yang Chun was in the Blue Cloud sect, he let several masters of the Blue Cloud sect see Hua Wanting's tribulation. He was worried that there was no opportunity to let the head of the palace see it once. The arrival of the old tree demon was simply a timely help, just to satisfy this little wish of Yang Chun. Almost everyone was nervously waiting for the moment of the old tree demon's tribulation. The elders had prepared the formation and protected several hall masters in the formation. They themselves were outside the formation, and at the same time, they were also ready to feel everything at close range. In the expectation of the people in Meiqing Mountain, the old tree demon finally triggered his fire tribulation. To be exact, it was the incarnation of the old tree demon that triggered the fire tribulation. A seemingly illusory flame began to burn from the soles of the old tree demon's incarnation, and then went straight through the mud wall palace. The whole body of the old tree demon seemed to be shrouded in an illusory flame. The whole person seemed to have turned into a human-shaped torch, burning wildly. The old tree demon suppressed the fire again and again, but again and again, the fire burned his body, and the fluctuations of the world's essence energy caused by the powerful spiritual power almost spread throughout the entire Meiqing Mountain. Even if there was still a distance, several masters of the Yuanying stage were shocked. This kind of shadowless and invisible fire was the tribulation they had to go through if they wanted to hit the Deshang stage. Just looking at it had such power. Once the real fire was on the body, what kind of fear would it be? The accumulation of the old tree demon was too thick, suppressing the fire over and over again, until after 9 times, all the fire attached to the old tree demon disappeared. Subsequently, a power that could not be looked at slowly burst out from the incarnation of the old tree demon. Chapter 3:26. The world's essence chi seemed to be out of control at this moment. The body of the old tree demon was like a huge whirlpool, madly sweeping the spiritual power of almost hundreds of miles. The clone of the old tree demon, in front of everyone's eyes, suspended in the air, began to complete the last step of his Deshang stage transformation. The terrifying spiritual power was like a tide, drowning the body of the old tree demon, and every fire just burned the impurities in the body of the old tree demon clean. At this moment, the spiritual power washed. Let the old tree demon break through the Yuanying stage and enter the realm of the Deshang stage. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the old tree demon's clone raised his hand and a dense light spot spread out from his body. The light spots were like goose feather snowflakes, almost covering the entire Meiqing Mountain, and then all the light spots slowly fell to the ground and quickly disappeared above the ground. After a while, the place where the light spots disappeared grew a young osmanthus tree seedling. Under the nourishment of the huge spiritual power, it grew quickly and grew to the thickness of a fist in a moment. At this point, the shadow of the osmanthus tree was almost everywhere on the Meiqing Mountain. The small osmanthus tree seedling behind Yang Chen's courtyard was no longer eye-catching and was submerged in the tens of thousands of osmanthus trees. Except for Yang Chen and Gao Yu, no one knew where the body of the old tree demon was. The formation arranged by the elders effectively resisted the attack of the spiritual power that escaped in the fire tribulation, and allowed several Jidan Stage Hall masters to witness this grand occasion. This was the first master of the Deshang stage born in Chunyang Palace in hundreds of years, and it was the first time that everyone was fortunate enough to witness the birth of a master of the Deshang stage. This also meant that Chunyang Palace would have a strong guarantee in the future, and the strength of the sect would go to a higher level. The group of elders, hall masters, and hall masters were so excited that they could not control themselves. They could not wait to go into closed-door cultivation to comprehend it. However, a master of the Deshang stage had just been born, and he was also the hall master of the Hall of Eccentrics in the sect. How could they be so rude? Therefore, after removing the formation, the first thing everyone did was to congratulate the old tree demon. On the side of the old tree demon's body, Yang Chun and Gao Yu watched the old tree demon extinguish the 9 fires in a row and complete the process of crossing the tribulation. Compared with the clone outside, the old tree demon's body was not fierce at all. It was just a faint little flame. Every time it flickered, it would be suppressed. But Yang Chen knew that this small flame had concentrated at least 90% of the power of the fire tribulation. What was seen outside was only 10% at most. At such a close distance, Gao Yu could of course feel the horror of the fire. When she saw it, she couldn't help but turn pale and ever nervously clenched her fists. Those who haven't really seen the heavenly tribulation can't imagine how terrifying the little flame is. At least Gao Yu seems to be scared. If such a terrifying power were to befall him one day, would he be able to deal with it so easily? Master, Yang Chun discovered Gao Yu's abnormality in time and grabbed Gao Yu's sweaty little hand. Watching the ceremony is to let you increase your experience, not to hit your confidence. When Yang Chen's hand was grabbed, there was a warmth in her hand. Gao Yu also woke up from that kind of depression and gently broke away from Yang Chen's hand without a trace, and then recovered her spirit. You are now only in the early Jidan stage. The Yin fire tribulation is indeed a little scary for you at the moment. But believe me, Master. Yang Chen's eyes stared at Gao Yu's eyes. Let her also look at his own eyes. All the tribulations will not be an obstacle in front of you. Yang Chen's words made Gao Yu quickly open the knot in her heart. Watching the ceremony was to increase experience, not to hit confidence. Moreover, Gao Yu had absolute trust in Yang Chen. It seemed that as long as Yang Chen said it could be done, Gao Yu felt that it must be possible. Here Gao Yu's mood changed rapidly. The old tree demon over there had already completed the Yin fire tribulation and began to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Yang Chen and Gao Yu, who were closest to the main body, of course, understood the whole process more clearly. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yang Chen cupped his hands and congratulated the body of the old tree demon again and again. Gao Yu next to him also did the same action, a series of congratulatory voices. Next was the grand ceremony of Chunyang Palace. The old tree demon became the hall master of the Hall of Eccentrics in a very high-profile manner. And Chunyang Palace also announced in a very high-profile manner that there was a master of the Deshang stage in Chunyang Palace. The friendly sect sent people to congratulate them. The sect began to receive them, and so on, a series of trivial things. Chunyang Palace once again became the focus, attracting the attention of countless sects and cultivators. However, all this had nothing to do with Yang Chen. In fact, after the ceremony that day, including the master of the palace, the people who watched the ceremony at the scene all carried out a small retreat. Everyone began to digest and absorb everything they saw. Gao Yu was no exception, and Yang Chen also conducted a detailed examination of his body. After saving his master, he was busy with a series of things. Yang Chen didn't even have time to check his own changes. Now that everything was done, he could finally check it carefully. Although the double cultivation of the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra brought Gao Yu back from the line of death, Yang Chen also had to pay a sufficient price. The cultivation of the spiritual awareness directly fell from the early Yuanying stage to the peak Jidan stage, a full drop of a big level. Even his sea of consciousness had shrunk a lot. But despite this, Yang Chen found that after this double cultivation, the framework of his sea of consciousness was more stable. The shrinking of the sea of consciousness was not the kind of shrinking of the disappearance of the spiritual awareness, but more like the forcible compression of the entire sea of consciousness, so that all the spiritual awareness was more condensed. After discovering this, Yang Chen was excited again. If he used all his spiritual awareness to exchange for Gao Yu's life, Yang Chen would not blink and frown. Now that he found out that it was likely that the result was not as bad as he had expected at the beginning, his mood was naturally more cheerful. After carefully practicing the 3 purities secret art, Yang Chen quickly found the difference. Compared with the original cultivation of the 3 purities secret art, it seemed that it was smoother and easier. Originally, the 3 purities secret art had reached the 3rd level, but every time it was a little difficult, and it was not so easy to complete a cultivation. But now, it was easy without any hindrance. Just like the territory was smaller, after the spiritual awareness was condensed, the flow was more rounded. It took a few days for Yang Chen to completely check his body. Except for the changes in the sea of consciousness, there was nothing unusual. In the following days, he began to recover the bottleneck. Someone visited Chunyang Palace, but that was not what Yang Chen cared about. Everything in Chunyang Palace seemed to be on the right track. Yang Chen once again returned to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa to continue his career as a disciple. Chapter 3:27. Gao Yu took back the Red Sun Iron Soul that Yang Chun had recovered for her and planned to refine a flying sword for Yang Chun. This flying sword was designed by Gao Yu with a lot of thought, and it would take at least a few years to complete. Now that the Red Sun Iron Soul was in hand, the main material of the flying sword was complete, and the rest was some auxiliary materials. However, this time, Yang Chen did not dare to let Gao Yu go out to look for it. He directly called Shi Kuei and Xie Sha and took out more than 70 Chinquan bags that they got from Howie Villa for Gao Yu to choose. Although it was already known in advance that Yang Chun, Shi Kuei, and Xie Sha, together with the old tree demon with a scar, destroyed Howie Villa, but when so many Chinquan bags were placed in front of them one by one, even the ancestor Wang Yong and the head of the palace were alarmed. Although the spiritual power of the 100,000 mountains was slightly deficient, the production was extremely rich. Howie Villa had been there for thousands of years, and the things they had hoarded were simply innumerable. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the materials that could fill up the entire Blazing Sun courtyard. Their hearts were filled with astonishment. Even Wang Yong had some doubts. If Yang Chun didn't stay this time, would it be possible for him to destroy a villa with such a huge heritage? So many materials. Even if it was the Chunyang Palace, it was not easy to take it out. Not to mention that there were so many fine products in it. And at the same level as the Red Sun Iron Soul, there were at least dozens of pieces, and the spirit stones were countless. The head of the palace, who had always been old and prudent, looked at these things and began to stutter. The kind of blazing in his eyes was like a guy who had been hungry for dozens of days and saw delicious food, and it was a super Buddha jumps over the wall. If it weren't for the previous meeting of the sect's disciples above the Jidan stage, it had already been discussed that the things obtained by the disciples belonged to the disciples. The head of the palace would have immediately announced the confiscation of these things. Looking at this scene, Yang Chun shook his head repeatedly. Fortunately, he didn't take out the things he obtained from the auction house manager and the young master. Otherwise, wouldn't they go crazy? After all, he was still a master of cultivation. He understood that these things were just worldly possessions. The head of the palace quickly calmed down his fluctuating mood and turned his attention to Yang Chun. Yang Chun, how about we make a deal? Palace Master Zhang Jiao said with a pleasant face. If this tone was heard by people from other sects, they would definitely laugh at Chunyang Palace for not distinguishing between seniors and juniors. The head of the palace actually used such a tone for a disciple in the early stage of the foundation stage. Wasn't it just a matter of a word? Was there a need to do this? However, outsiders might find it difficult to understand the feelings of the palace master for Yang Chun. Even in addition to a few elders and hall masters, those ordinary disciples could not understand. When it came to the contribution to Chunyang Palace, even the head of the palace himself could not say that he could be more than Yang Chun. Not to mention the matter of Yang Chen's glory outside, just the veins of the Liang courtyard, plus the two Yuanying stage masters of the Hall of Eccentrics and the master of the Deshang stage, were enough to make the head of the palace look at Yang Chun in a different light, and others would not have any jealousy. If it was counted in those outer sect disciples, Yang Chen's position in the mind of the head of the palace was directly above all the Jidan stage disciples. What was the use of a discussion tone? If it weren't for the fact that Yang Chen's cultivation base was too low to convince the public, the head of the palace could not wait to put Yang Chen in the position of an elder. Even if he replaced him as the head of the sect, he would be happy. Palace Master, please instruct me. The head of the palace was kind, but Yang Chun did not dare to be arrogant at this time, and hurriedly responded. You see, there are so many materials, you can't use them all at once. The head of the palace said happily, can you let the disciples of my sect also use spirit stones to buy or exchange some suitable things from you? Rest assured, the price is according to the market price. I will never let you suffer. The request was not excessive. Yang Chen had already discussed it with Shi Kuei and Xie Sha. Among these things, they did not take out the real boutique. Except for the materials used by Yang Chen's flying sword, the others were picked by several of them. On the way back from the 100,000 mountains, they didn't do anything else. They picked up all the good things. So many things, they were put there, they were originally intended to be taken out to do a favor. Of course, they would not do a favor in vain. Spirit stones were necessary. The head of the palace said that according to the market price, this did not show a favor. This one is for Master, and the other two are for several predecessors of the Hall of Eccentrics. Yangshan replied with a slight smile, "These things calculated with the market price. It seems too mean, so according to the market price of 20% discount is good. When Master chooses, I will hand these things over to Brother Shangwan to help us take care of them. If there is a need in the sect, you can exchange it at the market price of 20%. Although Shanghai Feng had already built the foundation, his qualifications were limited, and his future achievements were limited. Yang Chun and others naturally would not focus on these things, so they needed to find an agent to deal with these things. Shanghai Feng has been the general manager of the Ishio Villa for decades, and he was very good at dealing with these chores, which just let him play his strengths. Yang Chun and Shanghai Feng had already said this to him when they handed over. Shanghai Feng knew his own things. With his qualifications, it was already the limit for him to reach the Jiedan stage in this life. On the contrary, he was more happy to manage these things. He promised and patted his chest to guarantee that he could absolutely do a good job. Such a good thing, of course, the head of the palace, how could he not agree? He even made a promise that this treatment could only be enjoyed by the disciples of the inner sect of the sect. The disciples and servants of the outer sect should not think about external things and concentrate on cultivating the foundation stage. Of course, the inner sect disciples would not be allowed to use the price difference between the inside and outside to earn benefits. Once found, the gains would be confiscated and they could no longer trade. Of course, there were a few exceptions. Gao Yu and Wang Yong took what they needed. This was Yang Chen's filial piety. Their own master and master ancestor. Others could not say half a word. Gao Yu took enough materials and began to discuss in detail with Wang Yong how to refine the flying sword for Yang Chun. Shanghai Feng became the shopkeeper of the Liang Courtyard grocery store. Soon, the Liang Courtyard once again became the focus of the sect. All day long, people came here to find Shanghai Feng. It was even more lively than the warehouse of the sect. After everything was arranged properly, Yang Chun also began to calm down and no longer worried about other things. He was focused on being his own disciple, and at the same time, he was also preparing for the upcoming Dragon Embryo Spirit Cultivation Secret Art. Chapter 328. If there was no change in the development of this world, it seemed that in the next few months, the Dragon Embryo Spirit Cultivation Secret Art would appear and become popular in the entire cultivation world. As soon as Yang Chan returned to the 9 Earth Mountain Villa, he organized a round of guidance and inspection. On the one hand, he checked the cultivation progress of all the disciples and servants in the outer sect during this time. On the other hand, he seriously reminded them not to cultivate this kind of unknown cultivation method. As for the inner sect disciples, it was arranged by the head of the palace. Yang Chun even suggested to the head of the palace that when he found signs, he should immediately inform the world not to cultivate this kind of cultivation method. This was not Yang Chen's sudden kindness, but Yang Chen knew that even if Chunyang Palace issued such a notice warning, not many people would be willing to listen. In his previous life, the Dragon Embryo Spirit Cultivation Secret Art attracted the attention of many people. Most people did not believe it at first. Everyone held a research attitude to see if they could learn from the experience inside. Especially the masters, especially those who just enter the bottleneck period, they were willing to try any method that could break through the bottleneck. This was especially true among the big sections. As long as there were thousands of disciples in the inner sect, there must be a hall similar to the martial arts research hall, where a group of masters were specially gathered to study various cultivation methods, in order to improve the ancient cultivation methods or create new cultivation methods. This was a very good system that could constantly bring forth new ideas and strive for perfection. It was not that any cultivation method was so perfect and perfect when it was created. It was after the cultivation of countless people in later generations that the cultivation method could be modified little by little to reach a more perfect realm. When these people saw a cultivation technique that could raise all their attributes, they would definitely not ignore it. Among the major sects, in addition to those disciples who encounter bottlenecks, the biggest loss was such a group of elites. If it weren't for this, Lin Changhe would not have been attacked by a group of people. It was really that his practice had damaged the foundation of the major sections. Many people were immersed in the process of research. There were many Yuanying stage masters among these victims. It was not that there were no people around to persuade them. It was not that they didn't understand the truth that haste makes waste, but they still fell into it. Therefore, if the pure Yang Palace issued such a note, it would only get a good reputation afterwards, and the event itself would not have any change. People always liked to summarize after the event, and they would remember the golden advice they heard at the time. At that time, the reputation of the Chunyang Palace would become more and more resounding among the major sections. Is there really such a troublesome cultivation method that can't be studied? Although the palace master Zhang Jiao attached great importance to it, he also held the same idea. Studying it, not cultivating it? Don't have a fluke mentality. Just like the elders of the Blue Cloud sect, do not believe that the blood vine can break through the Chinquan bag. If the palace master doesn't want to lose the disciples of the sect master Xiong, if palace master doesn't want to lose disciples, it's best if you don't even look at this cultivation method after hearing the news. Sect palace master, sect Xiong sect Wu Xiong sect. If you don I don you I sect you don I sect master, the sect master of Xiong sect, it of sect. Things that could make Elder Wu Xiong afraid would naturally not be simple. Soon, inside the Chunyang Palace, there was a strict ban. If anyone violated it, they would be directly expelled from the sect. The severity of the punishment was unprecedented. At this time, the dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art had a vague wind, and there were already some people who tried to cultivate it. When the news of the ban of the Chunyang Palace came out, many people in the sect were a series of jokes. What kind of medicine did the Chunyang Palace eat? They were so careful. A small cultivation method. They were scared like this. Chunyang Palace just had a master of the Dashang stage, but it turned out that he was so timid that he was scared like this by a cultivation method. For a time, all kinds of rumors came one after another. The Chunyang Palace, with a master of the Dashang stage, with such courage, how could they still cultivate? They should go home and farm. There were even many Jidan stage disciples and several Yuanying stage elders who objected to this. It was just a cultivation method. It was not a big deal. It was not necessary to expel them from the sect after studying it, right? Except for Yang Chun, Gao Yu, and Wang Yong, plus the head of the palace. Everyone felt that this matter was a bit of a fuss. But this time, no matter how many people objected, the head of the palace was like a tortoise eating a weight, steeled his heart, and did not change his original intention. He issued a strict ban and directly took out the power of the head of the palace among the elders. Even if the elders violated the precepts, he would be severely punished. No matter what the people outside were saying, the Chunyang Palace seemed to have become a closed sect, and they no longer paid attention to it. Yang Chun carefully inspected all the disciples and servants of the Nine Earth Villa and the Ishio Villa. After carefully inspecting their cultivation base, he once again gave detailed instructions, and once again became leisurely. In another year or two, it would be the great tribulation of the demonic cultivation. Yangshan certainly would not let go of such an opportunity. Shikuei, Xiesha, and even the old tree demon came to the Nine Earth Mountain Villa. Under the guidance of Yang Chun, they began to refine their life source magic weapons. Of course, Shikuei had 4 sharp fangs, Xiesha was his tail's stinger and big pincer. As for the old tree demon, it was his toughest trunk branch and soft and tough long roots. Although the cultivation base of the 3 powerful monsters was strong, but in terms of the starting device, they did not know how many streets Yang Chun had to go. The method of the monster race was different from that of the cultivators. In addition to Yang Chen's guidance, their only chance was to go to the spiritual world to get guidance from their predecessors after ascending. The strong cultivation base soon made the 3 of them achieve outstanding results. In just half a year, their life source magic weapons had completed the rough embryo. After all, It was their own things, and the refining was very suitable. There was no rejection at all. On the contrary, Yang Chen himself had not made any progress. What Yang Chen wanted to refine was one of the yin-yang 5-element secret art second with flying sword. The material used was, of course, the blood demon vine. The blood demon vine has already sucked the flesh and blood of a master of the quasi-Deshang stage. Within the 100,000 mountains, it almost sucked the flesh and blood of thousands of cultivators of Howie Villa. There were Tao cultivators, demonic cultivators, and monster cultivators. The rich flesh and blood made the blood demon vine in a period of strong growth. This time was also the best time for Yang Chen to refine the flying sword. Of course, with Yang Chen's current cultivation base, it could only be regarded as refining a second with flying sword's sword embryo. In Yang Chen's plan, when the great tribulation of the demonic cultivation came, when the Tao cultivators besieged the devil Lin Changhe, this sword embryo must be completed. For Yang Chen, this second with flying sword embryo had an important role. Chapter 329. It was when the blood demon vine was full of vitality and growing strong. Together with the taproot, a piece of the main vine was picked down. This section, which concentrates almost 90% of the essence of the blood demon vine, is the main material of the second with flying sword. If Yang Chen hadn't spent a lot of time subduing the blood demon vine in advance, it would not have been so easy to get the material. Even so, it took Yang Chen almost a month to completely remove this section of the main material. The body of the blood demon vine lost a large section of the taproot and the main vine, and suddenly lost all its vitality. It took Yang Chen almost 2 months to let the remaining blood demon vines slowly recover some vitality. However, it could only maintain a glimmer of vitality. Before there was enough strong blood sucking, the blood demon vine could only be like a weak plant, living a dying life. The rest of the time was to refine the second with flying sword. The body of the blood demon vine was not strong enough, and Yang Chen still needed to add many other materials. Fortunately, this time the auction of Howie Villa and Magic Flame Valley was quite fruitful. Some auxiliary materials were even more advanced than the main materials of many cultivators to refine the flying sword. The consequence of advanced materials was that refining was difficult. There was no way to have the best of both worlds in this world. Fortunately, Yang Chen had the profound spirit furnace, and the profound spirit furnace had absorbed the sun's true fire and could smelt most metal materials. Otherwise, Yang Chen would not dare to think about refining the sword embryo. Another reason why Yang Chen decided to refine the second with flying sword first was that Yang Chen's current second with spiritual power was the spiritual power of the blood demon vine. From the perspective of control, it was also the most suitable, and the difficulty of refining was also the smallest. Yang Chen's immortal beheading saber was currently being nurtured in the blood river in his sea of consciousness. It was a magic weapon that Yang Chen wanted to nurture as his natal flying sword. In addition to the upgrade of its own materials and refining methods, the sword case could be upgraded by storing different sword souls. The Yiwood flying sword was one of the 10 great yin-yang 5 elements flying swords that Yang Chen had ordered. Even if it was to create a sword embryo, it was also a painstaking effort. With Yang Chen's current cultivation base, in addition to using his own spirit power to temper the sword embryo over and over again, there was no other possibility. In fact, even if Yang Chen's cultivation was high, he would still use the same method. The higher the level of the flying sword, the higher the requirement for its master to be compatible with it. This kind of spiritual power tempering over and over again was itself to increase this kind of tacit understanding. Unlike his previous life, the Yang Chen of this life, in addition to the ordinary method, had 3 unattainable cultivation methods. Universe Treasure Raising Secret Art, Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art, Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Secret Art. Any one of them was coveted by countless people even in the immortal world, but now it was concentrated on Yang Chen alone. In addition to the routine cultivation method, he would first follow the ordinary method, then the Hotion spirit treasure refining secret art, then the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art, and finally the universe treasure raising secret art. This was Yang Chen's homework every day. In fact, after doing this, Yang Chen would practice the three purities secret art again, and the day would basically be over. Just as Yang Chen was preparing his sword embryo calmly and regularly, the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method had spread among the cultivators. No one knew where this cultivation method came from, but they knew that overnight, this cultivation method became famous all over the world. Among them, the ban of Chunyang Palace was not unrelated. With the ban of Chunyang Palace, the major sects also knew the name of the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method. Chunyang Palace was so afraid, and naturally, many people did not take it seriously. First, some individual cultivators, in the absence of better cultivation methods, in order to improve their cultivation, began to practice with a try mentality. The heart crystal of meteorite seemed to have begun to be supplied everywhere in the cultivation world in a short period of time. This was an essential material for practicing the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method. With the heart crystal of meteorite, the effect of the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method almost made those who had practiced it ecstatic. The effect of almost ignoring all inner demons, and even being able to transform inner demons into the driving force of cultivation, directly fascinated countless people. The dragon embryo spirit cultivation method, or the subcultivation method of the child-mother-devil-fetus method, was originally a cultivation method of the demon sect, but it was pretentious so that people could not see the problem. Compared with the cultivation methods of Taoism, the cultivation method that could directly refine all kinds of negative emotions, increase confidence, and increase pleasure was far more fascinating than many of the orthodox cultivation methods of Taoism. There had never been a cultivation method that could refine the possible inner demons, all kinds of unhappiness and other negative emotions, and even all kinds of distracting thoughts into one's own cultivation after practicing. In contrast, the cultivation method of Taoism, which required one to keep one's spirit and qi and concentrate, was simply too weak in front of the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method. How attractive was the cultivation method that could turn all the distracting thoughts into cultivation? After the ban of Chunyang Palace, this effect was spread wildly in private. Which cultivator did not have a few relatives and friends? On the road of cultivation, it could easily last for hundreds of years. How could it be possible to live alone without one or two people to ease their emotions? Naturally, these people would think of their best friends first when there were benefits. If it was a secret manual, perhaps people would secretly practice it, but this kind of cultivation method that had already been spread out, no one would keep as secret. Moreover, if they did not help their friends when there were benefits, they would be letting down their friends. More and more people joined the army of cultivation, and the cultivation method was also spread more and more. Soon, people found another benefit of the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method. Some servants of small sects were surprised to find that among them, the most ordinary people who had no hope of cultivation and could not even find the feeling of qi, after practicing the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method, they easily broke through the first level of qi refining and entered the ranks of cultivators. First, the servants of a few small sects practiced without permission, and after practicing, they were surprised to find that their cultivation progress was even stronger than those official outer sect disciples. After being a servant for so many years, they could actually hold their heads up high one day. This immediately made those official outer sect disciples feel unbalanced, and they also rushed to start practicing. This discovery was the most fatal. Everyone knew that the foundation of disciples was the most important guarantee of whether a sect could survive for thousands of years. If practicing the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method could let the disciples with the worst qualifications enter the sect, then in the future, would the sect still have to worry about not having enough backup disciples? Wouldn't the sect become stronger? Chapter 330. The techniques of the demonic sects were easy to get started, but it was difficult to advance. However, when the solid improvement of cultivation was placed in front of them, they would not notice this obvious feature. Even if someone noticed it, they would not believe it. How could such a righteous technique be the means of the demonic sects? The crazy cultivation of the small sects and rogue cultivators led to the popularity of the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method. In just half a year, there were already many low-level cultivators in the chi refinement stage who had made rapid progress in their cultivation. They staged a passionate drama of revenge and humiliation everywhere, which stimulated more people to understand and cultivate. At this time, of course, some people remembered the warning of Chunyang Palace, and some people did not dare to touch it at all. However, as the people around them advanced in their realms after cultivating, they were stimulated by the huge increase in their cultivation level, and they could no longer hold it in. There was nothing wrong with the cultivation of others. How could it be as serious as Chunyang Palace said? In some small sects, almost everyone in the sect began to study this novel dragon embryo spirit cultivation method. After a few gold core masters joined, the real experts began to notice this magical technique. With various purposes, they began to join the army of cultivation. A year later, the entire cultivation world seemed to be spreading the magic of this technique. From the most basic newcomers who had not yet found the sense of chi to the gold core masters, all of them could improve the efficiency of cultivation. What kind of expert created this top-notch technique? The participation of the experts was naturally different from those junior disciples. They care more about their original cultivation method. However, after a few months of cultivation, these gold core masters were also surprised to find that this technique not only did not have the slightest conflict with their original cultivation, but even had complementary effects. There were many requirements when cultivating the orthodox Tao sect's cultivation method. Although everyone's cultivation experience was enough to control it, a cultivator was still a human after all. They had not truly entered the realm of having no desires or desires. They had not entered the state of having no distracting thoughts. These seem to be the strong points of the dragon embryo spiritual cultivation technique. Cultivating one's own cultivation method, coupled with the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method, could even improve one's original cultivation method very effectively. The dragon embryo spirit cultivation method refined all kinds of distracting thoughts and became a tonic for the original cultivation method, which then led to the original cultivation method's great improvement. The feelings of the experts were naturally different. When a number of Jidon masters joined, it naturally attracted the attention of the experts of some major sections. Therefore, after understanding the characteristics of this cultivation method, some Yuanying stage masters also began to join the research team. To be honest, if there were not a few famous Jidon stage masters who patted their chests to guarantee it, no Yuanying stage master would believe such a ridiculous cultivation method. How could this be? Having cultivated to this realm, who didn't understand the principle of more haste, less speed? How could there be such a speedy cultivation technique? But those Jidon stage masters who had cultivated before vowed that there was absolutely such an effect. The few experts held the attitude of researching and began to ponder the principles of the cultivation method. Of course, he only pondered and did not cultivate. The warning of the Pure Yang Palace, although many people were looking at it as a joke, but these big sects were not completely a joke, at least they still had a vigilant heart. Especially when everyone found that this dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art really began to become popular in the cultivation world within a short year. Those who could cultivate to the nascent soul realm were no fools. Everyone was very cautious. They were all carefully comprehending the principles of the cultivation method and carefully analyzing the composition of the heart crystal of heaven meteorite. Those who had cultivated the dragon embryo spiritual cultivation method had not had any problems until now. The only change for everyone was that the speed of cultivation was faster than before, and the effect of cultivation was more efficient than before. This was very rare, and these Yuanying stage masters also hoped to be able to understand the truth of the origin and use it to strengthen the cultivation method of the sect. It had to be said that some of the methods in the dragon embryo spiritual cultivation method to absorb and refine bad emotions were still extremely exquisite, and it was also very tempting to those Yuanying stage masters. They even raised this part alone and carefully pondered it, hoping to unravel the secrets. The masters were naturally different. Soon, some people discovered that the heart crystal of heaven meteorite was an unusually important medium in this part of the content. Several Yuanying stage masters of different sects, almost at the same time, carefully took 1/10 of the heart crystal of heaven meteorite that ordinary cultivators needed to practice, and then tried to cultivate their own improved cultivation method. Almost like confirming the vision of the Yuanying stage masters, everything in the cultivation process was carried out according to the guesses and calculations of the Yuanying stage masters. The feeling of having everything under control, the sense of superiority and strong self-confidence brought by the successful improvement of the predecessor's cultivation method, made these Yuanying stage masters quickly lost in this feeling. In their eyes, they did not cultivate the dragon embryo spiritual cultivation technique. Instead, they referred to some of the principles in it and improved and perfected their own cultivation method. This is what a true expert should do. They should not cultivate according to the shallow cultivation method that even a disciple could cultivate. In fact, this process was not easy. Even if it was a few Yuanying stage masters, it took them at least a year to study and improve 2 kinds of cultivation methods, and they also took a lot of detours. Things that were easily obtained, everyone would not cherish them, but if they went through their own hard work, it would be completely different. Although the improved cultivation method still needed a little help from the heart crystal of heaven meteorite, it was already their own cultivation method. Whether it was in terms of the sense of accomplishment of cultivation or the level of the cultivation method, it was completely different from the low-level dragon embryo spiritual cultivation method. The consequence of the participation of the masters was that the big sects also began to pay attention to these cultivation methods, and specifically sent masters to be responsible for integrating the most core cultivation methods of the sect, and then perfecting them into a system. At this point, the entire world of cultivators had been dragged into it. In addition to Chunyang Palace, which had been foolishly ordering all disciples to contact and cultivate, other sects, including Taishaman, Blue Cloud Sect, and Five Elements Sect, were also involved. Yang Chen has been paying attention to the news of the outside world. Fortunately, Elder Hua Wanting of Blue Cloud Sect took her new disciple Sun Qingxue to retreat after Yang Chen left last time. It was estimated that until now, there has been no opportunity to come into contact with this harmful cultivation method. In the 3-year wait, Yang Chen's Blood Phantom Vine Flying Sword's sword embryo also began to take shape day by day, and gradually there was a prototype of a flying sword. Chapter 331. The whole body of the second-wood flying sword was the blood-red color of the Blood Phantom Vine, long, with a little softness, but extremely tough. The main root became a sword hilt, and the main vine was the sword body. The sword body was more than 6 feet long, and only one side was the blade. From this point of view, this second-wood flying sword was more like a knife than a sword. Even the blade was transformed from a main vine of the Blood Phantom Vine. In addition to all the functions of the flying sword, this second-wood flying sword also had the crazy ability of the Blood Phantom Vine. Of course, the sword embryo refined by Yang Chen, a reborn great principal golden immortal, could naturally be upgraded with Yang Chen's future cultivation base. Every day was sacrificial refining this sword embryo plus cultivation. After completely stabilizing the foundation stage, Yang Chen's spiritual power of all attributes was synchronized to a level and reached the second level of the foundation stage. Yang Chen also cultivated the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art to the 5th layer and the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Secret Art to the 7th layer. The role of these 2 powerful cultivation methods. Yang Chen also carefully measured the changes before and after the cultivation with the Sky Measuring Ruler. In the hands of Yang Chen, the Sky Measuring Ruler has also undergone tremendous changes. The Sky Measuring Ruler, which was originally poorly maintained, was no longer the previous dilapidated appearance after Yang Chen used the Heaven and Earth Treasure Raising Secret Art to nourish it. It has become a brand new appearance, as if it had just been successfully refined. This Sky Measuring Ruler Yang Chun did not use the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend's sacrificial formation secret art to refine it, and he did not even mark it with his spiritual awareness. Originally, this sky measuring ruler was for the people around him to use when breaking through the bottleneck. It was meaningless to mark it with this exclusive mark. The mark on the sky measuring ruler could be measured by degrees. 1 degree was probably equivalent to the spiritual power intensity of a normal early stage foundation stage. According to the general truth, Yang Chun had just reached the early stage of the foundation stage. Even if he had 10 kinds of spiritual power, it was only about 10 degrees of spiritual power intensity, but the fact was not so. The spiritual power intensity was 39 degrees. This was the result of Yang Chen's spiritual power measurement on the sky measuring ruler. Beside Yang Chun, Shanghai Feng had only reached 3 degrees. Wang Yuan was only slightly better than Shangwan Feng at 4 degrees. Du Qian, on the other hand, was much more powerful. He had reached 74 degrees and was already in the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. At the same time that everyone's spiritual power strength was accurately measured, it also made a few people very surprised. They were both in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, but Shangwan Feng and Wang Yuan had reached the foundation establishment realm earlier than Yang Chun. However, their spiritual power had only increased a little compared to when they had just reached the foundation establishment realm. What did Yang Chun rely on? They were all in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, but he was so many times stronger than them. This was still the data before Yang Chen's spiritual power was upgraded. When he entered the second layer of the foundation establishment realm, he cultivated the 5th layer of the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art and the 7th layer of the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art. The measured data had reached an astonishing 68 degrees. The increased spiritual power intensity of the 2 cultivation techniques was so shocking that Yang Chun did not dare to let others know about this data. Equally interested was Gao Yu. The results of Gao Yu's test were very standard. The early stage of the Jidan realm just recovered from serious injuries, 110 degrees. If it was purely in terms of spiritual power intensity, the ordinary Jidan realm was only 100 degrees. Gao Yu just passed this number and did not seem to be very strong. Seeing this data, Yang Chen's determination to let Gao Yu practice the water attribute cultivation technique was even more determined. This great calamity of the demonic cultivation technique was obviously an opportunity. Of course, this also depended on how Yang Chen's technique was. When Gao Yu learned about the role of the sky measuring ruler from Yang Chen's mouth, she didn't think so at first. There was no need to make a fuss about a thing that could measure the strength of spiritual power. Yang Chun actually spent a gene of high-grade spirit stones to buy it. It seemed that he was indeed a bit of a prodigal son. But when Yang Chun explained the true use of the sky measuring ruler to Gao Yu in detail, Gao Yu couldn't help but widen her eyes and couldn't hide the shock. Who could have thought that a simple thing to measure the strength of spiritual power would have such a use? Obviously, this kind of thing was not a day or two in the auction house. It was not that no one knew that the sky measuring ruler could measure the strength of spiritual power, but no one bought it. It can only be said that no one could think that the sky measuring ruler could also be used for this. Go find Master. He seems to be in some trouble now. Gao Yu learned the true use of the sky measuring ruler and immediately couldn't sit still, and directly took Yang Chun to find Wang Yong. Wang Yong had made rapid progress some time ago, but now he has entered a bottleneck period. Despite the great stimulation of the heaven-seizing pill, his cultivation base has been unable to break through. Especially when he saw that there was an old tree demon in the sect, the pressure seemed to be greater. At this time, he was the most suitable person to use this sky-measuring ruler. Yang Chun didn't intend to hide it, and naturally went to visit the master ancestor with Gao Yu. After telling the role of the sky-measuring ruler to Wang Yong was simply surprised and happy. He was in the bottleneck period of the peak yuanying stage, and he always felt that he was making progress when he cultivated. With this sky-measuring ruler, Wang Yong firmly believed that he would never be troubled by this plateau bottleneck period again, and he would definitely have great confidence to break through. Wang Yong almost couldn't wait to use the sky-measuring ruler to measure his spiritual power cultivation base. 11,000 degrees. This intensity has actually exceeded the master of the Deshang stage who has just been promoted. Of course, all the data was just a reference. Except for indicating the strength of the spiritual power, it could not explain anything. But Wang Yong already had confidence again, especially when he found that his spiritual power strength had exceeded the standard of the Deshang stage. Master Ancestor, maybe if you want to break through with all your heart, there will be some obstacles. It's better to be busy with something else. Maybe you could be distracted and relax. Yang Chun then began to entice Wang Yong. How about refining a life source magic weapon? Chunyang Palace was not a big sect, so there were not many real high-level magic weapons. Although Wang Yong had already barely entered the peak Yuanying stage from the late Yuanying stage with the help of Yang Chun, he did not have a real life source magic weapon. In his previous life, Wang Yong did not even enter the Deshang stage, and he had been wandering in the Yuanying stage and died with hatred. Because of the troubles in his cultivation, Wang Yong still cared about refining a life source magic weapon. But now it was different. With the help of Yang Chun, Wang Yong entering the Deshang stage was no longer a dream, and even ascending was not something that was out of reach. At this time, a life source magic weapon could reflect the aura of a master after the breakthrough. Life source magic weapon. Wang Yong shook his head with a wry smile. There are no suitable materials to refine it now. Master Ancestor, this disciple has something. Please have a look at it. When Yang Chun heard Wang Yong's words, he immediately said with a smile. Chapter 332. What is this? Looking at the pointed cone-shaped Qilin horn, Wang Yong and Gao Yu were both puzzled. An unknown beast horn and a water attribute. What is the significance of this for Wang Yong, who is a fire attribute? It's not that Wang Yong hasn't thought about making a life source magic weapon, but first, he still has to break through his cultivation base, and second, there are insufficient materials. Even the things that Yang Chun brought back from Howie Villa, at Wang Yong's level, there are few things that can catch his eye. Instead of using third-rate materials to make a third-rate life source magic weapon, it is better to use this time to cultivate. Yang Chun knew Wang Yong's mentality, so he didn't take out the Qilin horn early. In the past few years, because of the change in Wang Yong's confidence, it was the time when his cultivation base was advancing by leaps and bounds. It was obviously inappropriate to disturb him with these foreign objects. Now, Wang Yong has entered the bottleneck period of the peak Yuanying stage, but it is just a suitable opportunity. When you work hard to break through, it will be because of the urgency of the mood that the more anxious you are, the more stagnant your cultivation base will be. At this time, putting down the idea of cultivation breakthrough and sacrificially refining a life source magic weapon can just relieve the pressure. The appearance of the Qilin horn shows the ninth water attribute, which is formed because it has been washed by the ninth water for thousands of years. The real attribute of the Qilin horn is the fire attribute, which is absolutely suitable for Wang Yong's attribute. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the horn of a fire Qilin. Yang Chun replied with a smile. I don't know where it is stuck. Anyway, it has been washed by some water with a strong ninth water attribute for thousands of years, so it has a water attribute and is still in this shape. Boom! When Yang Chun explained in detail the origin of this Qilin horn and the process of obtaining it, Wang Yong and Gao Yu have completely fallen into a state of absent-mindedness. The horn of the fire Qilin, this kind of thing that can only be encountered but not sought, how can it be easily taken out in the hands of Yang Chun? This was the real powerful treasure. What made the two people speechless to the extreme was that Yang Chun's luck had to go against the heaven's will. Under such circumstances, even if he went out to help his master's revenge, he could still find such a good thing. The fire Qilin flying sword that was hidden under the water element was indestructible and impervious to fire and water. As long as it was successfully forged, it would definitely surprise many enemies. When he received the Qilin horn, Wang Yong's hands began to tremble. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind. How heaven-defying did his luck have to be to receive such a good disciple like Yang Chun? It seemed that Wang Yong had not realized that his current cultivation was proceeding in accordance with the direction that Yang Chun had designed for him. However, this was not important. What was important was that Wang Yong knew that when he broke through the bottleneck, he would have the help of the sky measuring ruler and the natal flying sword refined from the Qilin's horn. These were enough. The Qilin horn needed a special method to refine, but with the experience of Yang Chen's extensive reading, this was not a big problem. Wang Yong was now ambitious again. He wanted to refine this Qilin horn, which had been naturally polished, into the most powerful natal flying sword of Chunyang Palace. Wang Yong had been depressed for a period of time because of the stagnation of his cultivation. But this time, Yang Chen once again proved to Grandmaster Wang Yong that as long as he had confidence, he could completely overcome any inner demon. Of course, this confidence was not blind confidence. It was genuine confidence that came from the bottom of his heart and had evidence to back it up. Wang Yong's current state was the real confidence that was provoked by the sky-measuring ruler and the Qilin horn. The dragon embryo spirit cultivation method seemed to be getting more and more intense because of the participation of several major sections. During this time, Yang Chun and Chunyang Palace had been watching coldly and had no intention of participating at all. However, Yang Chen's certainty could not affect several other people in Chunyang Palace. Since learning that several major sects had also sent people to join, several elders also began to suggest to the head of the palace that Chunyang Palace should not fall behind others. It seemed that it was necessary to bring the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method to study it. At the beginning, the head of the palace was clearly on the side of Yang Chun and strictly ordered that the disciples of Chunyang Palace should not be exposed to the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method. Otherwise, they would be expelled from the sect. However, things were getting more and more intense, and the head of the palace seemed to be a little bit unable to withstand the pressure. The elders also wanted to study it under the guise of thinking for the sect. After all, other sects were studying it, but only their own sect was indifferent. Wouldn't that mean they were falling behind? Moreover, not letting ordinary disciples come into contact with it was a prudent consideration, but they could let some elders who had reached the Yuanying stage try to study it. This would not hurt them, right? There was no way to bear too much pressure. The head of the palace could only come to Yang Chun to discuss it. After all, things were proposed by Yang Chun, and the warning was issued by Yang Chun. At this time, he had to discuss with Yang Chun how to solve it. How could Yang Chun agree? It was a pity to lose ordinary disciples, let alone the loss of Yuanying stage ancestors. Did the major sects really think that the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method was the key? The real key was the heavenly meteorite heart crystal. As long as a little bit was taken, it would be invaded by the heart demon, and then it would be out of control. The research of my sect has been much later than that of other sections. In this case, it is no harm to simply delay it for a period of time, right? Yang Chun knew that there would always be people who would not be able to hold it in. Watching the cultivation of others advance by leaps and bounds, these Yuanying stage ancestors also had pressure. When is it appropriate for us to postpone it? The head of the palace was indeed under a lot of pressure. For Yang Chen's method of delaying, he also nodded in approval. Wait for another 2 years. Yang Chen replied affirmatively. It's too late anyway. It doesn't matter for a year or two. After 2 years, if there are no problems in those sects, then my sect will also let the elders study it. If something happens to those sects, we will not lose. This was a way to have the best of both worlds. For a long time, as a Yuanying stage ancestor, he would not care about a year or two. The previous 3 years had already been waiting, and there was no need to rush to that point. After the impatient elders discussed it, they also agreed to this method. After all, this kind of cultivation method that suddenly appeared was indeed very suspicious. So far, no one knew where the source was. It was also the right way to see how others cultivated it. Except for Yang Chun, it was estimated that no one would know at this moment. There was no need to wait for 2 years. As long as after a short year, Lin Changhe would be exposed and the nature of the demonic cultivation method would be recognized. However, the price of all this was that all those who had cultivated the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method and had studied and taken the heavenly meteorite heart crystal regardless of their cultivation base, would all become useless. The lost cultivation base of these people would become a tonic for the devil Lin Changhe, and Lin Changhe would even directly enter the ranks of the masters of the Deshang stage. Chapter 333. The dragon embryo spirit cultivation technique remained popular for a whole year despite being welcomed or criticized by all parties. During this year, there were countless stories of enemies turning the tables and trampling on their enemies, which made the dragon embryo spirit cultivation technique extremely popular. The quarrels over this cultivation method never stopped until one day, when a Dao sect disciple discovered a well-hidden devil cultivator and began to hunt him down. That devil cultivator hid very well in a big city and was even a small local official. He usually followed the rules and did not reveal himself at all. If this Dao sect cultivator had not accidentally discovered that he had a large number of heart crystals, he would have almost been deceived by him. It was very abnormal that a small official in the secular world actually had a large number of heart crystals used by cultivators. When that Dao cultivator wanted to investigate further, the devil cultivator was already guilty and took the initiative to attack. The devil cultivator's cultivation was too low, so he was soon chased by the Dao cultivator. However, something surprising happened. The devil cultivator used some unknown method, and his cultivation actually increased greatly in an instant. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Dao cultivator hurriedly fled and finally let him escape. Perhaps the devil cultivator knew that he had been exposed, so he simply did not care about anything and began to increase his cultivation crazily. When the Dao cultivator brought a large number of reinforcements to eliminate the devil cultivator, they were shocked to find that in just a few days, the devil cultivator had increased from the foundation establishment stage to the golden core stage, and it was still increasing. In contrast to the incessant rise of the devil cultivator's cultivation base, the chi condensation and foundation building cultivators who had cultivated the dragon embryo spirit cultivation technique had all lost their cultivation base overnight, unable to muster up the slightest bit of their cultivation base. Not only that, almost everyone's cultivation source was more or less destroyed. This was not just a problem of a few hundred or a few thousand people. It directly involved tens of thousands of cultivators. The crazy disaster immediately sent those who had been cultivating the dragon embryo spirit cultivation technique into hell. Only then did people realize that things were not good. After the analysis of a few experts, this devil cultivator was very likely to use a unique method to steal these cultivators' cultivation. And the method to use, it was the dragon embryo spirit cultivation technique and the heart crystals. None of the chi refinement realm and foundation establishment realm cultivators who had cultivated the dragon fetus spiritual cultivation technique were spared. At this moment, the gold core realm cultivators who had cultivated the dragon fetus spiritual cultivation technique also panicked. Now that their cultivation was still there, it could only mean one thing. If the other party wanted to steal their cultivation, they must have a higher cultivation than the person whose cultivation was stolen. What happened next clearly proved this inference. The devil cultivator came and went like a ghost. No one knew his origin. They only knew that he was called Lin Changhe when he was an official in the secular world. Under everyone's siege, Lin Changhe once again hid himself. However, the calamity was not over. It had just begun. After a short month, the Jidan stage masters finally began to suffer. Because of the difference in realm, the Jidan stage masters lost their cultivation base for a longer time. The most terrifying thing was that they didn't lose their cultivation all at once, but a little bit every day. It was just like how Lin Changhe couldn't digest every day after eating until he was full. He had to wait until the next day to continue absorbing. In fact, that was indeed the case for Lin Changhe. It took enough time to refine the cultivation base absorbed every day, but this refining process was many times faster than ordinary cultivation. But those Jidan stage masters who were hit were miserable. Was there anything more cruel than watching their own cultivation base being lost day by day, and eventually leading to their cultivation base being completely abolished and becoming a waste? This process continued day by day, but it could never be stopped. The huge torture even made a few Jidon stage masters with poor psychological quality directly commit suicide. They had reached the realm of the supreme power and were used to the feeling of being superior. If they were to be restored to the same level as ordinary people, or even worse than ordinary people because of the damage to their origin, how could they bear it? Not everyone could be as decisive as Sun Qingxue in her previous life, ruthless to themselves, and could rise again after their cultivation base was abolished. Most people, after being abolished, were in great pain and unable to recover. The Jidon stage masters only lasted for 2 months, and it was the turn of the Yuanying stage masters. The Yuanying stage ancestors were very cautious when they chose to cultivate. They usually used the truth in the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method to improve their own cultivation method. They thought that there would not be too big a problem, but when their cultivation began to fade, it caused greater panic. There were at least dozens of Yuanying stage ancestors involved in this matter, and they were all pillars of the various sections. Moreover, the existence of the Yuanying stage ancestors was also a manifestation of the high-end strength of the sects. But in the great calamity of the demonic cultivation launched by Lin Changhe, these high-end strengths were also destroyed. Up to now, the whole thing had been called the great calamity of the demonic cultivation by the masters in the Dao sections. Because of a demonic cultivation method, it caused a great shock in the entire Dao sections. It was not an exaggeration to call it a great calamity. Almost more than 90% of the Dao sects began to panic and frantically mobilized people to find the whereabouts of the devil Lin Changhe at all costs. But the devil Lin Changhe seemed to have suddenly disappeared from the world, except for the masters who were losing their cultivation base day by day, which could also prove that the devil Lin Changhe was still hiding in an unknown corner. There was no other trace. Dozens of Yuanying stage ancestors were in their own sect, in the process of a group of masters frantically trying to save their cultivation base. They slowly became decadent, and their cultivation base plummeted. No matter what kind of elixir they swallowed, no matter what method they used, it was of no use. Some people were involved in the major sect, and they could only watch the pillars of their own sects wither helplessly in front of them. It was impossible to see how high-spirited they were when they were cultivating this cultivation method. There were dozens of Yuanying stage masters involved, and it was said that there were 2 masters of the Deshang stage. Although it had not yet affected them, looking at this posture, it was already a disaster. Finally, someone suddenly remembered that even if the other party was a demonic cultivator, when he broke through the Yuanying stage and entered the Deshang stage, he would always trigger the Yin fire tribulation, and it would also cause the fluctuations of the Yuan Qi within 1,000 miles. Perhaps by this method, they could find the whereabouts of the devil Lin Changhe, and it seemed that the best time to kill him was when Lin Changhe was crossing the tribulation. If he was disturbed during the tribulation, there was no other way but death for those with insufficient cultivation base. The tribulation of the demonic cultivator was even more terrifying. As long as they could find the place where he was crossing the tribulation, it was estimated that it was the best time to kill the devil. Chapter 334. From the beginning of someone's cultivation base being seized, the news spread to the Chunyang Palace. When they heard the news, the first reaction of the elders was it a false rumor outside? A mistake. When more and more accurate news came, and some rogue cultivators in the range of Meiqing Mountain also suffered, everyone remembered the ban of the head of the palace at that time. They remembered that in the next few years, the head of the palace had to agree to everyone's request, but asked everyone to postpone the research. They couldn't help but have a cold sweat. Fortunately, at that time, the head of the palace listened to Yang Chen's words and issued a strict ban. Otherwise, wouldn't Chunyang Palace be like those sects, and their vitality would be greatly damaged? The elders were even more afraid. If they had forced the head of the palace to agree at that time, wouldn't they have followed the footsteps of those people? Waiting for their own cultivation base to disappear little by little in despair was likely to be them. At that time, because of Yang Chen's proposal, Elder Lin Yinfeng, who was the most vocal in opposition, was even more scared. It must be known that at that time, in order to hit Yang Chen, He personally persuaded several elders to force the head of the palace to abdicate. The biggest instigator of this matter was Lin Yunfeng. Yang Chun said in front of him that if Elder Lin had to study it, he would never stop him. However, the other elders could not follow Elder Lin's nonsense. In the end, the head of the palace listened to Yang Chen's words and delayed the time by 2 years. Originally, Lin Yunfeng also planned to see Yang Chen's joke after 2 years and then teach him a lesson. A small foundation stage disciple was not qualified and had no ability to manage the affairs of the elders. But now he discovered that if it weren't for Yang Chen's insistence, he, a dignified Yuanying stage ancestor, would be a waste. Now Lin Yunfeng didn't know what kind of attitude he should use to face Yang Chen. Was it gratitude? Or no face? Or continue the hatred of the past? Left with no other choice, Elder Lin Yunfeng could only awkwardly choose to go into seclusion. Perhaps at this time, not meeting was the most suitable method. The head of the palace and several elders who followed Lin Yunfeng at that time, after a period of fear, remembered that Yang Chen was a good disciple. If it weren't for Yang Chen, Chunyang Palace would have suffered heavy losses. Once something happened to them, the Pure Yang Palace would immediately be reduced to a third-rate sect. Sects like the Taishaman's Blue Cloud sect could afford to lose. It was not a big deal to lose a few Yuanying cultivators, but for Chunyang Palace, it was a disaster. In his previous life, it was precisely because of the great tribulation of devil arts that the seeds of the destruction of the Chunyang Palace were planted. In this life, Yang Chen finally saved the Chunyang Palace on this matter. Under such circumstances, it seemed that Chunyang Palace had slowly entered the threshold of a quasi-first-class sect. In the entire Taoism, it seemed that Chunyang Palace had not suffered any losses in this great tribulation of devil arts, and from the junior disciples to the senior elders, there was no loss. When 99% of the sects suffered huge losses, this could not be said to be a miracle. At this time, some people remembered that Chunyang Palace seemed to have reminded all the sects when the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method appeared at the beginning, and it was a very formal notice. At that time, Chunyang Palace even issued a strict order that no disciple was allowed to touch this method. In the past few years, before the great tribulation of devil arts had completely broken out, the disciples of the major sects had laughed at Chunyang Palace, especially those cultivators who had already practiced the cultivation method. Chunyang Palace, a small second-rate sect, could not see the general trend. Many people regarded Chunyang Palace as a laughingstock. Even when they met the disciples of Chunyang Palace outside, they would ridicule them, causing the disciples of Chunyang Palace to not go out easily. But now was finally the time to reveal the dagger. Those who had laughed at Chunyang Palace were embarrassed to find out who was the real fool. It was conceivable that it would not be Chunyang Palace. Many people wanted to complain. Since Chunyang Palace knew that this cultivation method was wrong, why didn't they try their best to stop it at that time? However, this kind of complaint could only be thought in their hearts. At that time, Chunyang Palace had sent a note and formally reminded the leaders of the major sects, but no one took it seriously. Now, what reason do they have to blame Chunyang Palace? For now, it was too late to say those regrets. The most important thing at the moment was to find the place where Old Demon Lin crossed the tribulation and completely kill Old Demon Lin in order to dispel the hatred in everyone's hearts. Almost all the Taoist cultivators in the world came out, and Chunyang Palace was naturally no exception. All the disciples in the sect who were not in seclusion were sent out and divided into several groups. Each group was led by a master of the Yuanying stage to look for the whereabouts of Old Demon Lin everywhere. Of course, Yang Chen was with Gao Yu. At the same time, he followed Wang Yang's group. At the same time, there were more than a dozen Jidan stage masters and hundreds of Foundation establishment stage disciples. They were scattered within 100 miles to take care of each other at any time. Of course, Yang Chen remembered the place where Lin Changhe crossed the tribulation. However, this limelight was not suitable for Yang Chen. Originally, Wang Yang was the most suitable, both in terms of seniority and cultivation. But Yang Chen now had a better candidate. The establishment of a hall of eccentrics in Chunyang Palace caused a heated discussion among the Taoist sections. Until now, there were still people who opposed it. It was only because they were afraid of Wu Xiong's attitude that they didn't openly criticize it. This was the best opportunity for the Hall of Eccentrics to contribute to the Taoist sections. As long as they could show that demon beasts could also contribute to the Taoist sects, the voices of opposition would naturally become smaller and smaller. 3 days later, there was good news from the old tree demon. Although the cultivation of the Yuanying stage masters who had been infected by the demonic art had not yet been completely abolished, the old tree demon's powerful Deshang stage divine sense had already roughly locked onto the location of Lin Changhe and the old devil. It was in that area within 100 miles. There was no mistake. Of course, the news was spread to the major sects through the most secret channels. At the same time, another piece of news arrived, and that was that the date of old demon Lin's tribulation might be 3 or 4 days later. In fact, the experts of several sects had already roughly calculated this location based on the distribution of the masters who had lost their cultivation, but no one had been able to find it for sure. The old tree demon at the Deshang stage had used his powerful divine sense to find traces of the demonic art absorbing spiritual energy, and thus confirmed the location. After the two sides verified it, the major sects no longer had any doubts. They all sent their most elite experts to surround the area within a radius of hundreds of miles so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. This time, Lin Changhe and the old devil were absolutely doomed. Chapter 335. Almost all the powerful cultivators from the various sects had gathered in the area, with a circumference of several hundred miles. However, all of them had stayed quiet and hid their auras, waiting for Lin Changhe to trigger the heavenly tribulation. Then, they would make their move and make their move. However, everyone thought very well, but Yang Chen knew that this was just the wishful thinking of the Dao sect's cultivators. Lin Changhe later not only passed the tribulation, but also entered the Deshang stage, and even destroyed the cultivation base of 2 Dashang stage masters who had cultivated the dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art. Finally, because he absorbed too much chaotic spiritual power in a short period of time, he did not have time to thoroughly refine it, which led to the demonic backlash and his death. After thinking about it, in the end, Lin Changhe still killed himself, and it had little to do with the Dao sections. If there was a little relationship, it could only be said that the pressure of the Dao sects made him forcibly integrate and absorb a lot of spiritual power. That's all. If he was found at the time, he would not be so guilty. There would not be such a problem at all. Before the master of the palace sent his disciples to Chunyang Palace, he had consulted Yang Chen about what kind of attitude he should use to face the demonic tribulation. To be honest, it was a bit outrageous for the master of the palace to consult a younger generation disciple who had just reached the foundation stage for a few years. However, the master of the palace could not be careless. Yang Chen's performance in the demonic tribulation was too good. If it were not for Yang Chen, maybe Chunyang Palace would not be able to recover this time. Although Yang Chen was provided by Elder Wu Xiong, the master of the palace knew very well that Elder Wu Xiong had not yet ascended, but he had not said a word about it. Elder Wu Xiong was not a person who had no friendship with some big figures, but he never reminded them of this. Of course, these ideas were in the mind of the master of the palace, and he had never communicated with anyone. He now treated Yang Chen not as an ordinary disciple, but as an elder of Chunyang Palace. Yang Chen's words could affect the attitude of the master of the palace at any time. Lin Changhe is not a simple demon. We can't be careless. Yang Chen did not hide much from his sect leader. In any case, we've already reminded them, but they didn't care. This time, we can't stand out too much, or else we'll be hated by everyone. When the time comes, we'll just have to work without putting in too much effort to avoid incurring heavy casualties. You mean, this time it's not necessarily possible to get rid of old Demon Lin? Yang Chen's words made the palace master gasp. After Yang Chen's insistence that the disciples of Chunyang Palace should not be exposed to the dragon embryo spirit cultivation method, the palace master admired Yang Chen's eyesight and judgment. When he heard Yang Chen's words, he panicked. "Palace Lord, do you still remember the last time you attended this ceremony?" Yang Chen asked. At that time, except for the real masters of the Deshang stage, how many people can get close? If we can't even get close, how can we interfere? But Hall Master Gui is a master of the Deshang stage. If we don't work hard, it won't look good, right? The head of the palace was a little worried. Chunyang Palace had a reputation that was not easy to establish. It couldn't be casually given up. Taishaman Blue Cloud sect has a master of the Deshang stage, but my Chunyang Palace is the only one that stands out. Yang Chun shook his head. These things could be thought of by the head of the palace, but he didn't know whether he should do it or not. Yang Chun just said what he knew, and the head of the palace would judge. After a conversation with Yang Chun, the head of the palace also tacitly instructed Gui Shanyu, that was the old tree demon. Anyway, the biggest prize had already been obtained by Chunyang Palace, so why fight for this reputation with others? Gui Shanyu had lived for many years, but he was thorough about this and did not fight for this reputation. The instructions of the head of the palace were exactly what he wanted, and he left with a clear mind. The day of Lin Changhe's tribulation was approaching day by day, and more cultivators gathered in this area, but none of them entered the circle within 100 miles. No one wanted to beat the grass and startle the snake at this time, leading to failure. Yang Chun, Gao Yu, and others were scattered in the outermost circle. Wang Yong had already reached his mouth, and their cultivation base, in this level of battle, could not play any role at all. From the beginning of finding Lin Changhe's position, in fact, there was no need for the disciples below the Jidan stage. Yang Chun was here purely to show a sense of participation, to watch the excitement, and did not intend to do anything at all. But Yang Chun thought so. Not everyone thought so, especially the few Jidan stage masters of Taishaman who had suffered heavy losses. Looking at Yang Chen's leisure, they couldn't help but start gossiping. Isn't this young Taoist of Chunyang Palace? Why, on such an occasion, does young Taoist also plan to amaze the world again? An incomparably ridiculing tone came from a group of cultivators, and the guy who spoke was an acquaintance of Yang Chun, the Taishaman Jidan stage master Chung Wen-kai, who had embarrassed Yang Chun at the Heaven Stairway gathering. It had been almost 20 years since the Heaven Stairway incident, but Chung Wen-kai was still brooding over it. At that time, his mistake not only harmed several Jidan stage masters of the same sect, but also harmed 10 Jidan stage masters of other sections. Even he himself suffered heavy losses. Not only did his realm fall from the Jidan stage back to the Foundation Establishment stage, but he also lost decades of lifespan. Over the past 20 years, with the elixirs of his sect and his own hard work, Chung Wen-kai finally returned to the realm of Jidan stage master again. But for Yang Chun, who caused him a fall to that point, he could never let go. When he talked about it, he also gnashed his teeth. Li Qing Chun was his martial nephew, who died in the hands of Yang Chun a few years ago. Although it was a life-and-death challenge, and both sides could not pursue it afterward, Chung Wen-kai obviously remembered Yang Chun heavily. In addition, this time, Chunyang Palace was in the limelight, which made several major sects, including the Taishaman, feel a little embarrassed. A second-rate sect could understand the truth and strictly guard against it, but their first-rate sects made such a low-level mistake, which was really unjustifiable. Chung Wen-kai did not think that this was the fault of his own sect. If there was a fault, it should be Chunyang Palace. They clearly knew that it was wrong, but why didn't they try to persuade them? The humiliation of the sect, plus the conflict between him and Yang Chun in the past, new hatred and old hatred were counted together. When he saw Yang Chun, naturally, they all surged in his heart, and he could not help but speak acrimoniously. How can this kind of occasion have anything to do with me? I just followed my master to see the world and broaden my horizons. For Chung Wen-sai's ridicule, Yang Chun did not take it to heart at all, but the other party's words of ridicule, Yang Chun would not let go of it. He politely smiled and retorted, "But Senior Chung, you must be the best candidate to eliminate the evil and defend the right. I admire you." Chapter 336. Even if Chung Wen-kai restored his Jindan stage cultivation, because his lifespan was shortened and his origin was consumed crazily, no matter how he cultivated, his cultivation was limited. What's more, even if there was no loss, he was just a Jindan stage master. On such an occasion, it was already his limit to stay in the circle of 100 miles away. He was still far from being able to eliminate the evil and defend the righteousness. Yang Chen's irony made Chung Wenkai even more angry. If Chung Wenkai had not been because of the previous loss, he might have practiced the dragon fetus spirit cultivation method. But at that time, he happened to be replenishing his origin, and he could only watch helplessly as he missed the opportunity. When the truth came out, he shouted that it was a close call. However, once there was prejudice, people would have thought that they shouldn't have. In Chung Wen-sai's eyes, not only was he not grateful to Chunyang Palace for their timely reminder, but he felt that Chunyang Palace's reminder was not firm and thorough enough, and it had harmed everyone. Even counting Yang Chen's personal anger, Chung Wenkai was even more angry. At this time, he didn't care about the self-restraint of a Jinan stage master. He directly sneered at Yang Chen and said, "It's good that you have self-awareness. Chunyang Palace is just a small place, and you dare to say that you will eliminate the evil and defend the righteousness? It's better to watch here honestly than to go inside and make a fool of yourself." In the voice, it was the pure Yang Palace that was also scolded. As soon as these words came out, not only Yang Chen, but also Gao Yu was enraged. Gao Yu had a hot temper, not to mention that her disciple, Yang Chen, had once had a double cultivation with her. He had done a lot of things for her, Wang Yong, and Chunyang Palace. How could she allow Chung Wenkai to be presumptuous? Fellow Taoist Chung, if you don't take back your words, although Gao Yu is a woman, I can't allow fellow Taoist Chung to slander my Chunyang Palace and look down on my Chunyang Palace's disciple. Gao Yu's face became serious at the moment, and she blurted out, "Why, did I say something wrong?" Chung Wenkai sneered again. "Aren't you two watching the show outside the circle of hundreds of miles? How many people in your Chunyang Palace really risked their lives in the front? In the end, we couldn't even touch a hair on the devil's head, let alone exterminating the devil." Before Gao Yu could fight back, Chung Wenkai had already continued to say, "In the great tribulation of devil arts, all the sects in the world suffered heavy losses. Only your Chunyang Palace is unscathed. If you weren't in cahoots with Demon Lin, then you didn't have the guts to come into contact with demonic techniques from the start. With such guts, how could he cultivate to become an immortal? If I were you, I'd quickly retreat into your Meiqing Mountain and be a cowardly tortoise, lest you lose your life in vain. Senior Chung, I don't know what crime you have committed by saying that my Chunyang Palace is in cahoots with Bayan Demon Lin." Without waiting for Gao Yu to speak, Yang Chen had already asked in a deep voice, "Is this your own idea, or the idea of the Taishaman? No matter whose idea it is, it's useless for you to be here. You'd better go back honestly and cultivate your peaceful immortal." When it came to the sect, Chung Wenkai didn't dare to speak casually. He could only be vague, but the contempt in his words was not concealed at all. "Lest we can't get the right thing done here, and we will make mistakes instead. So, Senior Chung is sure that we will be in the way?" Yang Chen's tone became gentler and gentler, still maintaining the title of senior. But people who were familiar with Yang Chen knew that Yang Chen was angry. "Of course, you are a burden," Chung Wenkai said unceremoniously. He not only had more than a dozen brothers in the Jidan realm, but also a martial uncle in the Yuanying realm. He was really not afraid of Gao Yu falling out with him. Determining this, Chung Wenkai said more arrogantly, "You can't do anything but spoil things. You can't even touch a hair of the devil, and you dare to say that you killed the devil and defended the Tao? If I really touched the hair of Devil Lin, what would Senior Chung say?" Yang Chen followed Chung Wen-sai's words and asked with a smile, "How could there be such a thing?" Chung Wenkai did not answer Yang Chen's words, but sneered and said, "A little foundation establishment junior also dares to talk big. I'm not talented, but I want to make a bet with Senior Chung." Yang Chen still said with a smile, "I bet that I can touch the hair of Devil Lin. I don't know if Senior Chung dares to accept it." "Bet what?" Chung Wen-sai's eyes lit up, and he seemed to realize that this was an opportunity for Yang Chen to humiliate him. So he asked hurriedly, "If I lose, I will kowtow to Senior and admit that I am a burden." Yang Chun seemed to be forcing himself into a desperate situation and directly gave such a bet. How about it? Good. Then let's make a bet. Chung Wen Kai and the surrounding Taishaman disciples were like flies smelling the smell of blood, and the expressions on their faces were wonderful. Chunyang Palace had a great reputation. If they could use Yang Chen's hand to make Chunyang Palace so lose face, it would also be a wonderful thing. However, if I win, what is Senior Chung going to put out as a bet? Yang Chun did not give Chung Wen Kai a chance to take advantage of the loophole and asked directly, "Cut out a bet. How about it? You are a Foundation Establishment disciple. Kowtowing is not enough." Chung Wen Kai was not fooled and shook his head directly. "What if I join?" Gaoyu stood up in time. She trusted Yang Chun very much. "If Yang Chun loses, I and my disciple will kowtow to you and admit our mistakes." "Good. In that case, if I lose, I will also kowtow to the two of you and admit my mistakes." Gaoyu was also a Jidan stage master, so Chung Wen Kai naturally had no reason to shirk. However, he did not think he would lose. He laughed very arrogantly. "At that time, I will invite my relatives and friends and wait to see the two of you kowtow to me." There were so many people at the scene, and there was no need to make an oath. Everyone was a Jidan stage master, and there would be no such thing as repudiation. Soon, the news began to spread among the cultivators. A junior in the Foundation Establishment stage also wanted to touch the hair of Devil Lin. He was really bold and arrogant, and even put up the reputation of his master. When others heard this, they immediately shook their heads, and naturally, they thought so. "Yang Chun, if you dare to lose, I will expel you from the sect in the future, and I will never admit that you are my disciple." Gaoyu was also really angry, and she ordered Yang Chun to win. Although she didn't know how her disciple could do it, she didn't think that Yang Chun would lose. This was the instinctive trust brought by Yang Chen's continuous miracles. What if this disciple wins? What are the benefits? Yang Chen enjoyed the atmosphere with Gaoyu and asked with a smile, "What do you want?" Gaoyu glanced at Yang Chen and asked slowly, "This disciple is not talented, and I want to ask Master to promise me one thing." Yang Chen's heart moved, and he suddenly had a good idea, and he directly made a request. Okay, Gaoyu didn't ask what it was and agreed. Chapter 337. Since the last time Yang Chun saved his life and Gaoyu's spiritual awareness double cultivation, Gaoyu has been hiding from Yang Chun. She said that she was concentrating on refining the flying sword for Yang Chun, but in fact, she was afraid to meet Yang Chun. But this time they came out to encircle Lin Changhe. Gaoyu was afraid that Yang Chun would have an accident. She knew Yang Chen's ability to cause trouble, so she has been keeping Yang Chun by her side, strictly watching him and taking care of him carefully. In short, she could not let anyone hurt Yang Chun. Chung Wen Kai actually dared to look down on Yang Chun. With Gaoyu's character, of course, she could not tolerate it and immediately stood out. At this time, it was the master and apprentice, a glory and a loss and a loss, a grasshopper on the same line. When Chung Wen Sai's party laughed triumphantly and left, Gaoyu turned around and asked Yang Chun, "The bet has been made. I have agreed to your conditions. How are you going to win?" "Wait for the pie to fall from the sky." Yang Chun couldn't explain to Gaoyu. He could only say this. "Anyway, the bet is just that I will encounter Lin Chang's random hair. Let the old man Gue help grab one." Originally, Gaoyu was still a little worried, but when she thought of Gue Shanyo's powerful strength in the Deshang stage, she nodded with some peace of mind. A master of the Deshang stage, it may be a little difficult to kill Lin Changhe on this occasion, but it should not be unimaginable to grab a little of his body. Then what are we doing now? At this moment, Gaoyu was not like a master at all. It seemed that everything was following Yang Chen's actions. It's a good opportunity to take the opportunity to nourish my newly acquired magic weapon. Yang Chen smiled and said in a very mysterious way. As he spoke, he inserted the sword embryo made by the blood phantom vine into the trunk of a big tree beside him. What magic weapon is this? Gaoyu looked at Yang Chen's movements with a little doubt and asked, "What's the use of this?" This wood attribute magic weapon has not yet been formed. It needs to absorb the first wood qi crazily. Yang Chun lied casually. Once I start absorbing, ordinary trees can't bear it. I don't want to harm the big trees in Meiqing Mountain, so I can only absorb a little from the big trees here. The aura of the wood attribute was very strong, but Gao could not distinguish in such a short time whether it was a magic weapon of the first wood or the second wood. However, Yang Chun has always been very assertive, and Gao will not doubt anything. Although Chung Wenkai left, he left behind a Taishiman's Foundation Establishment Stage disciple to follow Yang Chun, as if he was monitoring him. He understood what Yang Chun had just said, but he didn't say anything. He just sneered inwardly. This kind of big tree seems to be thick, but it doesn't have much spirituality. What's the use of absorbing it? Next, in the eyes of the Taishiman's disciple with contempt and surprise, Yang Chun and Gao Yu have never changed their behavior. Gao Yu followed Yang Chun. Everywhere they went, they found a big tree and then inserted the blood-colored sword embryo into it to absorb the spiritual power. The behavior of the two was very casual and very relaxed. It seemed that in the treatment of Lin Changhe, it was simply a posture of gaining experience. However, in the eyes of others, there was nothing special about it. Not to mention that Yang Chun was a disciple of the Foundation Establishment Stage. Even if it was a Jidan stage master like Gao Yu, it did not seem to play much role in this great tribulation of demonic cultivation. It was nothing more than a few people shouting a few times and mixing their existence. In the relaxation of the two, the day of Lin Changhe's tribulation also came quickly. When the Yin fire tribulation came, within a few hundred miles, almost as long as it was a cultivator, they would be aware of the terrifying power of heaven and earth. The cultivation base of Lin Changhe and the Old Devil was really strong. The Yin fire tribulation was so powerful that the masters who had planned to besiege them didn't expect it. The previous proud calculation, under this terrifying Yin fire tribulation, was almost useless. Even the masters of the Deshang stage who came forward, in the face of this kind of heavenly power, did not dare to come forward easily. Even everyone thought of a possibility. If they came forward, they might be used by Lin Changhe as a target to resist the heavenly tribulation. Don't look at the few masters of the Deshang stage who have passed the Yin fire tribulation. It was because they understood the Yin fire tribulation that they didn't dare to come forward easily. They really didn't expect that the heavenly tribulation triggered by Lin Changhe would be so powerful. The stronger the heavenly tribulation, the stronger Lin Changhe's cultivation base. After realizing this, everyone was almost desperate. If they couldn't take advantage of Lin Changhe's tribulation to hurt him, with his cultivation base, after the tribulation, he could kill almost all the people who came to besiege him. This was the result that everyone would never want to see. For now, there was only one way. That was several masters of the Deshang stage and other Yuanying stage masters, with the determination to use their most proud magic weapons to attack Lin Changhe, who was in the midst of the tribulation. Even if the magic weapons were destroyed by the heavenly tribulation, they must distract Lin Changhe. The heavenly tribulation had already occurred, and the time was urgent. At this moment, those who have already felt the pain of it understood even more that if Lin Changhe was allowed to safely pass the heavenly tribulation, it would be even more difficult to kill him. In particular, there were two masters of the Deshang stage who also cultivated the Dragon Embryo Spirit Cultivation Secret Art. They couldn't afford the loss of the two masters of the Deshang stage once Lin Changhe was promoted to a master of the Deshang stage. Countless Jidan stage and Yuanying stage masters have proved that as long as Lin Changhe's cultivation base surpassed them, their cultivation base would become Lin Changhe's tonic, without exception. In this case, the masters of several sects had a common enemy, and they could no longer care about their proud magic weapons or life source magic weapons. Under the leadership of the Deshang stage master of the Greatest Heaven sect, who had already practiced the Dragon Embryo Spirit Raising Secret Art, they all raised their magic weapons and attacked the figure of Lin Changhe, who was facing his tribulation a few miles away. In the discovery of Lin Changhe's place of tribulation, the old tree Demon Gue Shan Yu played an irreplaceable role. When attacking Lin Changhe, The old tree demon was also the one with the biggest momentum. A hill not far away was directly lifted by the old tree demon and smashed towards Lin Changhe. However, although the momentum was huge in terms of power compared with the life source magic weapons of those masters, it was not comparable at all. But this couldn't be blamed on Gue Shanyu. So far, he has not had a suitable magic weapon as his life source magic weapon. As a monster, it was congenitally deficient in refining. This was known to everyone and could not be blamed. In the midst of the loud noise, because dozens of Yuanying stage masters and Deshang stage masters' life magic weapons attacked Lin Changhe's side, and then the Yuan Qi shock caused by the Yin fire tribulation directly made all the ordinary creatures within 100 miles faint. Chapter 338. Close to the place where Lin Changhe went through the tribulation, within a radius of 10 miles, there was not a single living creature except for those nascent soul cultivators and those above the nascent soul stage. Under the bombardment of dozens of magic treasures, even someone as strong as Lin Changhe had to divert his attention to deal with them. However, the Yin fire tribulation helped him a lot at this time. As long as it was within the range of the heavenly tribulation, as long as it was contaminated with spiritual power, everything would be affected by it. As soon as those magic treasures entered the circle of the heavenly tribulation, they were immediately burned by the Yin fire. Dozens of Yuanying stage masters suffered the pain of their life source magic weapons being burned by the Yin fire. Their cultivation was not enough to trigger the Yin fire tribulation, but they had to bear at least 20% of the power of the Yin fire tribulation. As for those magic treasures, they bore the brunt of the attack and immediately began to be destroyed. Everyone understood that this was not the time to feel pity for those magic treasures. Natal magic treasures were precious, but compared to the rise and fall of the sect and their own lives in the future, they were just worldly possessions that could be abandoned at any time. Even if he was injured because of this, it would still be worth it if he could deal a heavy blow to Lin Changhe. Lin Changhe, who was at the center of the heavenly tribulation, was a demonic cultivator after all. The greatest characteristic of demonic cultivators, or rather, the greatest characteristic of demonic arts, was that it was relatively easy at the beginning, and one's cultivation progressed very quickly. However, the further one progressed, the more difficult it became to cultivate, and the more demons in one's heart would appear. In a short period of less than a year, Lin Changhe rushed from the Qi refining stage to the peak Yuanying stage. Not to mention that he was a devil. Even if it was Yang Chun, who had been reborn and whose state of mind was far beyond the Deshang stage, it was impossible to be completely unaffected. It had to be said that the strategy of the Taoist masters was very correct. Lin Changhe's state of mind was already unstable, and he was attacked by everyone during the tribulation. Even if he had 2 lives, Lin Changhe would most likely be devoured by the tribulation. Lin Changhe's performance was too domineering, causing everyone to stake everything on a single attack. However, the bad thing was that everyone was attacking recklessly. The attack had indeed caused Lin Changhe a lot of trouble, but it had also given him a huge opportunity. Dozens of life source magic weapons of masters of the Yuanying and Deshang stages dispersed most of the power of the Yin fire tribulation. The moment the attack touched his body, Lin Changhe felt like he was going to die. But when he had completely let go of everything and welcomed the arrival of death, he was suddenly surprised to find that the power of the Yin fire tribulation was much smaller. What surprised Lin Changhe the most was that when he thought he was going to die, he no longer paid attention to the flying, distracting thoughts and the attacks of the people around him. He completely relaxed. In this state, he was enlightened in an instant. For Lin Changhe to be able to improve the mother-child demonic technique and deceive countless people, Lin Changhe himself was an extremely intelligent person. This momentary epiphany also allowed him to discover a way to overcome his inner demons. Moreover, there were dozens of high-level magic weapons to share the tribulation for him. Even at the very beginning, his spiritual power was chaotic, and he was about to die. But in the next moment, he tenaciously survived and began to accept the test of the Yin fire tribulation. At the same time, it was also condensing his body and removing impurities. No one had expected such an outcome, including Yang Chun. He only remembered that Lin Changhe did not fail to cross the tribulation because of the attack of the crowd, but he did not know the reason. Just as everyone was struggling to resist the burning of the Yin fire tribulation, they were still weakly attacking Lin Changhe, waiting for him to be burned to ashes by the Yin fire tribulation. One after another, the Yin fire tribulation fell on Lin Changhe's body, and Lin Changhe's figure was getting more and more dispirited. Every time the Yin fire tribulation came, everyone could see him spurting blood from afar. Such a situation made everyone more confident. Everyone was trying their best to resist the burning of the Yin fire tribulation. The magic weapons were also struggling to move in the Yin fire tribulation, hitting and cutting Lin Changhe's body. And Lin Changhe was getting worse and worse. It seemed that as long as there was a slight attack, he would die. Lin Changhe's aura in the eyes of everyone, and in the scan of their spiritual awareness, there was almost only a line left. At this point, everyone had already made up their minds and felt that Lin Changhe had no possibility of escaping. The 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th. Just as everyone was waiting expectantly, the Yin flames descended one after another. However, Lin Changhe was like a tenacious cockroach, maintaining a trace of life force, his life hanging by a thread. At the moment when the 9th tribulation ended, the master of the Taishaman's Deshang stage couldn't help but rush up. The speed was almost comparable to lightning. The moment when the tribulation just ended, it should be Lin Changhe's weakest time. Looking at Lin Changhe's appearance, as long as he added a palm, he could complete the mission of eliminating the demons and defending the Tao, and it could make his reputation reach the apex. However, when the elder who rushed out just rushed to within 100 feet of Lin Changhe's closed eyes suddenly opened, and 2 thick blood-like rays of light shot directly on his face. No! The elder of the Taishaman's Deshang stage suddenly found that the spiritual power in his body seemed to be out of control and began to disappear rapidly, and the aura of Lin Changhe on the opposite side suddenly began to become stronger. For Lin Changhe, the master who had cultivated the dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art, was simply the best tonic for him. And the elder of the Taishaman, when Lin Changhe needed it most, delivered himself to the door in time, and he was still within 100 feet. Before the others could react, the elder of the Taishaman had lost the ability to move and was completely controlled by Lin Changhe. Before everyone's eyes, a transcendent cultivation base rapidly became a tonic for Lin Changhe. In a moment, the whole body's essence and blood seemed to be drained, and the appearance of a middle-aged man rapidly aged and became an old man. It happened in an instant, and when the others understood, Lin Changhe had become a master of the Deshang stage in his heyday. His blood-red eyes stared at the people around him who were also injured, and he hung in the air and sneered. "Oh no, Elder Lu has been killed by him. Hurry up and do it." Another master of the Deshang stage also cultivated the dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art. At this moment, he finally realized that a disaster was imminent, and he hurriedly reminded loudly. Unfortunately, his reminder at this moment was too late. He only shouted a sentence, and his whole body was controlled, and he could no longer move. He watched as his whole body's cultivation base left his body, and in a flash, he turned into an old man with white hair and beard, and he was dying. Subsequently, Lin Changhe's sneer almost spread over 100 miles. In front of him, there were a lot of Yuanying stage masters with ashen faces. Chapter 339. The destruction of their life source magic weapons has seriously injured the spiritual awareness of many Yuanying stage masters. There were a few Yuanying stage masters who were poor and had no life source magic weapons, but because their most proud magic weapons were destroyed by the Yin fire tribulation, their strength was greatly reduced. At this critical moment, they had to face the terrifying Lin Chang and the old devil who had just passed the Yin fire tribulation and entered the Deshang stage. And the most speechless thing was that the 2 masters of the Deshang stage, who had the deepest cultivation base among them, had actually become tonics for others. The remaining masters of the Deshang stage, in addition to the old tree demon Gui Shanyu of the Chunyang Palace, there was only a female elder of the Green Jade Immortal Island, Min Huafeng. Obviously, Elder Min Huafeng of the Green Jade Immortal Island had become the backbone of everyone. However, before Elder Min Huafeng had any new instructions, the master of the Taishaman who rushed over at the beginning flew back directly. The old body was like a puppet tied by a string, and it quickly flew to the side of everyone. Boom! In the strange eyes of everyone, the bodies of the two masters of the Deshang stage, who had become old men, suddenly burst open. The flesh and blood in the sky, accompanied by a crazy force, rushed into the Yuanying stage masters. Dozens of Yuanying stage masters were not prepared at all. No one thought that Lin Changhe would be so vicious. He actually absorbed the cultivation base of the two masters of the Deshang stage, and even blew up their bodies. Caught off guard, many Yuanying stage masters didn't even have a decent protection. Seeing that everyone was about to be injured under this vicious attack, suddenly, there was a large crisscrossed net outside everyone's body, firmly sealing the flesh and blood outside. It was the old tree demon Gui Shanyu who directly took action and blocked the flying flesh and blood outside. But even so, everyone saw with their own eyes that there were cracks on the branches of the old tree demon. Some of the Yuanying stage masters who were surrounded in the middle were directly shocked and vomited blood. This blow alone had clearly demonstrated the gap between the old tree demon and Lin Changhe. The other party hadn't even made a move yet, but the old tree demon's branches had already been damaged. It seemed that the difference between them wasn't just one level. However, at this time, no one said anything sarcastic. The fact that the old tree demon could block such an attack at this time and save everyone meant that he was a companion. Companions should share a common hatred and fight the enemy together. Elder Min Huafeng of the Green Jade Immortal Island took the lead and rushed to Lin Changhe. No matter how many people's cultivation bases Lin Changhe absorbed, after all, he had just completed the Deshang stage tribulation. The weakness that should have been there, and the instability of the realm, still existed. Don't look at his strong performance, but it was difficult to hide the injuries under his strong appearance. Boom, boom, boom. Countless roars sounded a few miles away from the two of them. The violent Yuan Qi fluctuations made those Yuanying stage masters who were attacked shocked. Hurry up and heal. The voice of the old tree demon sounded in the ears of a group of Yuanying stage masters. I can't hold on for long. With the voice of the old tree demon, a small medicine bottle flew to those Yuanying stage masters. In the medicine bottle was the 3 Revolutions Essence Culturing Pill refined by Yang Chun. It may not have a great effect on severe injuries, but it was very timely to supplement the loss. Everyone was a knowledgeable person. No one was polite. They directly took out the medicinal pills from the medicine bottle and swallowed them. While healing their injuries, they watched the battle in the distance. The shock brought by the battle between the two masters of the Deshang stage could be imagined. The aftermath of the crazy explosion spread here. Even the branches of the old tree demon that surrounded everyone were making a crisp sound, and some small branches were directly broken. Some people quickly noticed this. Chunyang Palace had a master of the Deshang stage, which made many people afraid. But now it seemed that although this old tree demon was a little stronger than them, in front of the real Dao Sex and Demon Sex Deshang stage masters, there seemed to be a certain gap. Not only did he not even have a life source magic weapon, but the aftermath of the battle between the two masters could injure the old tree demon. These judgments, coupled with the old tree demon's courage to block the attack for them, and then generous behavior of giving medicine, quickly made these masters of the Yuanying stage of the major sects accept the old tree demon. Originally, it was just because of the politeness of the Dao sects, but now, since there was not too much threat, it would not affect the balance of the sects, and the old tree demon did make a great effort. The original identity of Gui Shanyu did not seem so dazzling. The master of the Hall of Eccentrics in Chunyang Palace was truly accepted by the Dao sects cultivators. Naturally, the Hall of Eccentrics in Chunyang Palace was also accepted. The effect of the 3 Revolutions Essence Culturing Pill refined by Yang Chun was amazing. Soon these Yuanying stage masters discovered the abnormality. After their bodies recovered, they also rushed out of the protection circle of the old tree demon and rushed to the battle circle of the two masters of the Deshang stage. Only a few of their life source magic weapons were seriously damaged, and their spiritual awareness was deeply damaged. They were still protected by the old tree demon. If they really fought against Lin Changhe, with the deep accumulation of the old tree demon, he could completely fight against Lin Changhe alone, and maybe he could even hurt him. However, under the guidance of Yang Chun, the old tree demon Gue Shanyu was also aware of the situation and did not want to be in the limelight. Anyway, after finding Lin Changhe, the Chunyang Palace was unscathed. It was already the biggest limelight for the Chunyang Palace. The remaining glorious mission of eliminating the demons and defending the Dao should be handed over to these big sections. Appropriate concealment was good for the Chunyang Palace and the old tree demon. Gue Shanyu was an expert in forbearance as early as when he was in the 100,000 mountains. Almost no one could find him. Now it was easy to pretend to be a master with not so pure cultivation base, and he quickly gained the trust of a group of people. His realm is unstable now. Attack. Don't let him catch his breath. With the addition of dozens of Yuanying stage masters, the pressure on elder men of the Green Jade Immortal Island was also greatly reduced, and she began to organize an organized confrontation. Everyone knew that if they didn't take advantage of this time to eliminate Lin Changhe, this old devil, once he escaped, it would be a lingering nightmare for all sects in the future. So no one flinched. Even in the face of a master of the Deshang stage, they rushed up without hesitation. Suddenly, casualties began to appear on the scene. Originally, the two masters of the Deshang stage were only evenly matched, but if there were dozens of masters of the Yuanying stage, it would be completely different. Bang! A Yuanying stage master was thrown out of the circle, flying in the air while spurting blood. The old tree demon's branches quickly grabbed the person back, and then a medicinal pill was forced down. At this moment, Elderman's attack had already hit Lin Changhe's body fiercely, causing the old devil to retreat, and his mouth was full of rage. Chapter 340. The scene was very lively, but within 100 miles of the outer circle, those Jidan stage masters could not get involved at all. As for the farther circle, like Yang Chun, they were nominally here to besiege the devil, but in fact they were here to broaden their horizons, not to mention. Fortunately, Yang Chun didn't care about what was going on inside. Anyway, Lin Changhe would eventually die because of the spiritual power backlash. Yang Chun was not worried at all that he would resurrect. It felt very cool to absorb other people's cultivation base, and his own cultivation base would also rise quickly, but to absorb the cultivation base of two Deshang stage masters, and it was still a conflicting attribute that was not dying fast enough. Apart from Yang Chun, perhaps only Lin Changhe now knew this. Now, he may be regretting why he wanted to be greedy for deterrence and absorb the cultivation base of the second Deshang stage master. The spiritual power of the whole body was like boiling. The attributes of the two masters were different, and the cultivation methods were different. They were completely opposed to each other. Now in Lin Changhe's body, it was also like a battlefield, and the spiritual power was fighting wildly. Don't look at him now. Dealing with elder men of the Green Jade Immortal Island seems to be easy, but the trouble of internal force was only clear to him. If he only absorbed the cultivation base of a Deshang stage master, maybe it would not be so troublesome, and he could recover to a relatively good state. Blame Lin Changhe's greed, and it was also related to his usual habits. Before the Deshang stage, he would absorb the cultivation base of all the suitable targets, no matter who they were. There were not many Yuanying stage masters who cultivated the dragon embryo spirit nourishing secret art, but there were dozens of them. Although the cultivation base of these people was relatively different, after all, they had all attributes and could maintain a balance. There were only two Deshang stage masters, and their attributes were mutually exclusive, and they finally tasted the consequences. His tribulation was disturbed. Although he barely survived, the hidden dangers had been buried. In addition, in order to recover, He desperately absorbed the cultivation base of two Dashang stage masters whose attributes were mutually exclusive. Now Lin Changhe was actually an arrow at the end of its flight. Although Elder Min of the Green Jade Immortal Island did not think of the latter point, she was very sure that in the midst of the tribulation, Lin Changhe was definitely not so comfortable. A group of Yuanying stage masters attacked desperately, cooperated with the female elder, and soon forced Lin Changhe into the corner. At this time, everyone could see that even if Ren Linchang had 3 heads and 6 arms, he wouldn't be able to escape the inescapable net laid down by so many experts. Lin Changhe's situation was really bad. The spiritual power in his body had already begun to rebel, and his opponents were relying on their numbers to constantly consume his strength. Although he had already killed a nascent soul cultivator and wounded several others, every time he wanted to follow up with another attack, he would always be stopped by the old tree demon. Chasing the injured Yuanying stage cultivator, he would always encounter the old tree demon's attack. And if he wanted to escape from this circle in the chaos, he would always be hit by the old tree demon at the critical moment, and then all his efforts would be in vain. After a few times, Lin Changhe was so angry that he almost went crazy. However, at this time, he could no longer hold back. If he didn't break through this situation, he would probably be left here today. Thinking of this, Lin Changhe could only grit his teeth, shouted, and launched the secret method. Among the mother-child demonic techniques, there was a kind of cultivation base that consumed life and life essence to improve for a short period of time, similar to the heavenly demon disintegration great technique. In a short period of time, it could make people's cultivation soar, but it had to pay a heavy price. What Lin Changhe launched at this moment was this kind of secret method. Boom! The besieging people suddenly found that Lin Changhe, who was besieged, was getting faster. The dozen Yuanying stage masters who only dared to attack from a distance did not expect such a change. Caught off guard, several Yuanying stage masters couldn't dodge, and they were penetrated by 2 demonic weapons and died in the blink of an eye. Under the siege of Elder Min and dozens of Yuanying stage masters, there was suddenly such a casualty. Elder Min was furious, and the plan to slowly kill old Demon Lin by besieging him was suddenly abandoned. The furious Elder Min even intended to put Lin Changhe down on the ground at the cost of injury. But after Lin Changhe was stimulated by the demonic technique, his speed was appalling, and it was obvious that his cultivation base had skyrocketed. He didn't entangle with Elder Min at all, but he killed the Yuanying stage masters on the periphery. The old tree demon saw that the situation was not good and also joined in. However, he could only protect a few people in time at most. These people were also the people of several sects that Yang Chun had specially told. The other Yuanying stage masters were chased by the furious Lin Changhe. In less than a quarter of an hour, nearly 10 Yuanying stage masters were killed by Lin Changhe. Elder Min also paid the price of 10 Yuanying stage masters, and finally caught up with Lin Changhe and began to attack frantically. Yang Chun inserted the blood demon vine sword embryo horizontally into a huge old tree. This old tree, he didn't know how many years it had grown. It was much thicker than the old trees Yang Chun had found before. In another 2 or 4 hours, it should be over, right? Yang Chun looked at the direction of the crazy battle from afar, feeling the violent fluctuations of the spiritual power of heaven and earth, and said to himself, this was already the 100th tree that Yang Chun had inserted. According to Yang Chun, after this tree, Yang Chun would no longer need to work hard, and this magic weapon would also be preliminarily completed. Let's wait a little longer. Gao Yu also looked at the direction of the battle worriedly, but she didn't know what to do. Yang Chun and Cheng Wensai's bet has not been settled yet. On the contrary, Yang Chun was not anxious at all, which made Gao Yu feel very strange. After killing 10 Yuanying stage masters in a row, Lin Changhe really couldn't support it anymore. If he didn't leave at this time, he would never have a chance to escape in the future. The Dao sects are so ostentatious. This Lin will go first. In a sneer, Lin Changhe's figure suddenly turned into a blood light, escaped into the ground, and disappeared directly in front of everyone's eyes. The demon 5 elements blood escape, This was the most powerful escape secret method that Lin Changhe had mastered. His figure would directly turn into a blood light to escape. No matter what 5 elements he encountered, he could escape. Brush, Elderman had already caught up with Lin Changhe's aura and chased after him. The old tree demon also shouted and let go of the masters who were protecting him. His figure flashed, and he chased after him. Lin Changhe dared not to be careless under the pursuit of the 2 Deshang stage masters. He madly urged his demonic arts and almost fled in a panic. Along the way, Lin Changhe had already felt the existence of some Dao Sect's Jidan stage masters. He sneered in his heart and did not show up at all. He directly buried his head and escaped. Soon they were close to the outermost periphery of the encirclement. Elder Min and Gue Shanyu were thrown far away. Lin Changhe no longer had any scruples, feeling the aura of several juniors in front of him. He directly found the thickest tree in the middle of them and escaped. Yangshan only felt his breath tighten and hurriedly pulled Gaoyu back. Then everyone saw the top of the big tree and a bloody figure rushed out. However, the figure that rushed out just rose a few feet and suddenly split into 2 pieces from the middle and fell down. Chapter 341. Only Yang Chun, Gaoyu, and a Taishaman's foundation stage disciple were present. Suddenly seeing such a situation, except for Yang Chun, all of them were shocked. If someone else chases you, do you still have to take this road? Yang Chun sighed secretly in his heart. Every injustice has its perpetrator. Every debt has its debtor. This is what you sent yourself. You can't live. After sighing, Yang Chen's body had already twisted and appeared next to the big tree. With a stretch of his hand, the blood phantom vine sword embryo inserted in the big tree was pulled out, and then without looking at it, he directly stuffed it back into the merit ring. With another flash, Yang Chen's figure had already appeared at the top of the tree. The 2 pieces of the corpse were hanging on the tree, but there was no trace of blood. Yang Chen didn't say anything. He first took off the Chinkoan bag. This was the trophy. He didn't want to take it. After putting it away, he carried the 2 pieces of the corpse and jumped to the ground. Did you see it? I not only touched his hair, but I also killed him with my flying sword. Yang Chen shouted at the Taishaman's disciple very rudely. What? The Taishaman's disciple was shocked, pointing to the 2 pieces of the corpse without any blood. He was stunned. You said this is old Demon Lin? Are you kidding me? While talking, Elderman Huafeng of the Green Jade Immortal Island had already appeared in front of everyone in a flash, followed by the old tree, Demon Gue Shanyu. Seeing that old Demon Lin's body had been divided into 2 halves, Elder Min's eyes lit up, and she asked with great joy, who killed him? It's this junior. In the face of master of the Deshang stage, Yang Chun was not so arrogant and replied respectfully. Then he immediately saluted Gue Shanyu. According to the seniority of the sect, Gue Shanyu was now Yang Chen's elder. You? If Gaoyu stood up and admitted it, maybe Elder Min would accept it a little. After all, Lin Changhe was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Maybe he would be injured in the hands of a Jidan stage master. But if Yang Chun, a disciple of the foundation stage, admitted it, Elder Min would never believe it. How is it possible? Nothing is impossible. Yang Chun replied with a smile. I was using this tree to nourish the flying sword and absorb the wood chi when he suddenly escaped from the tree. There was no need for Yang Chun to say anything else. Everyone knew what had happened. Yang Chen's flying sword was in the middle of the tree, and it was also of the wood attribute. Lin Changhe used the 5 elements escape technique to escape from the tree, but he didn't notice the flying sword. It was equivalent to sending himself to the edge of the flying sword and being cut in half. The 5 elements escape technique was not omnipotent. At least in some cases, it was impossible to escape. The refined flying sword was one of those cases. If this was not the case, it seemed that as long as one mastered the 5 elements escape technique, he would be invincible in the world. Wouldn't that be a big joke? However, in any case, Lin Changhe did indeed die under Yang Chen's flying sword. No one could deny this. Just now, he couldn't believe that the corpse was the Taishaman disciple of old Demon Lin. Now that he saw Elder Min, he was naturally convinced. Not to mention that soon a group of Yuanying stage masters also appeared, including several Yuanying stage masters of Taishaman. This time, there was no need to doubt the identity of the corpse. The problem was that this Taishaman disciple was deliberately left by Cheng Wenkai to supervise Yang Chen. Cheng Wenkai bet with Yang Chen that if Yang Chen could touch a hair of old Demon Lin, he would kowtow and admit his mistake. But now, Yang Chen not only encountered old Demon Lin, but even old Demon Lin himself was killed by Yang Chen. Originally, Yang Chen's plan was not to place the flying sword horizontally in the big tree, but vertically. Although the sword embryo of the Blood Phantom Vine has been forged and refined, it has not yet been completely sharpened, and it cannot be regarded as a complete flying sword. And the best way to sharpen this flying sword was to drink the blood of a master. In this world, the most powerful were the masters of the Deshang stage. When the Blood Phantom Vine was still its original body, it had been absorbing the blood of Elder Hua Wanting for hundreds of years. However, at that time, Elder Hua was only at the peak Yuanying stage, the quasi-Deshang stage, and had not really crossed the tribulation to become a master of the Deshang stage. Now, the Blood Phantom Vine flying sword finally drank the blood of Lin Chong and the old demon. The reason why there was no drop of blood on the corpse was because of this. Strictly speaking, Lin Chong and the old demon had just absorbed the cultivation of two other Deshang stage masters. What the Blood Phantom Vine flying sword absorbed was not just one Deshang stage master. However, this was obviously not the right time to take out the Blood Phantom Vine flying sword to see what kind of state it had become. There was still a large number of masters to deal with in front of them. The people were killed by Yang Chen, and the old tree demon Gue Shanyu was by his side. It was naturally not good for others to ask Yang Chen for Lin Changha's Chinquan bag. A bunch of people could only gnash their teeth and curse Lin Changha, and then crazily envy Yang Chen. In the end, what kind of dogshit luck did it take to put a flying sword here and let an old devil of the Deshang stage hit it himself? Speaking of which, so many sects had sent so many masters and even paid the lives of two masters of the Deshang stage and more than a dozen Yuanying stage ancestors. But no one thought that in the end, the reputation of eliminating demons and defending the Tao fell on the Little Foundation Establishment stage Junior Yangchun. To say that they were not reconciled, it must be that most people were not reconciled. They had worked so hard for so long and paid such a painful price, but they actually helped this junior. However, none of the people present showed it on their faces. They were all Yuanying stage ancestors, and there were even elders of the Deshang stage. How could they make life difficult for a younger generation junior for such a trivial matter? Seeing Lin Changha's body divided into two pieces with their own eyes, everyone had a kind of joy in their hearts. At the last moment, Lin Changha actually used the blood escape method to escape. If it weren't for Yang Chen, maybe Lin Changha would have escaped. And if they couldn't kill Lin Changha, in the future, all the Dao sects would face the crazy counterattack of the old devil, and no one could bear this crime. Yang Chen killed Lin Changha. Whether it was intentional or unintentional for the Dao sects, it was a great contribution, and no one could deny this fact. After the initial little bit of unwillingness, everyone praised Yang Chen. Some people who had heard of Yang Chen also began to envy Yang Chen's luck. If such a disciple with great luck was a junior of their sect, how good would that be? At this time, the most awkward one was the Taishaman's Foundation Establishment Stage disciple. When he saw the elders of his sect, he had to come forward and greet them. However, when the elders of his sect asked him why he was here, he stuttered and couldn't say anything. Chapter 342. It wasn't that he couldn't say it, but he was a little afraid to say it. Cheng Wenkai was a Jidan stage master, so he might not care about the momentum of these Yuanying stage ancestors, but he was just a little junior in the Foundation Establishment stage. Standing in front of many ancestors, he was trembling with fear and did not dare to breathe. Fellow Taoist Cheng of Taishaman made a bet with this junior, and he is the witness. Yang Chen was not afraid at all, and directly revealed the bet in front of a group of experts. Fellow Taoist Cheng said that this junior couldn't touch a hair of old Demon Lin. After saying this, Yang Chen directly leaned over pulled out a hair from Lin Chang's body, and then shouted at the many masters. I also asked the seniors to be witnesses. After that, he separated his hands and pulled the hair in two. This junior has touched the hair of old Demon Lin. The bet had already spread. At first, these experts thought it was a joke, but now that the party involved had admitted it, they knew it was true. The Yuanying stage ancestors who were not Taishaman, seeing this situation, all laughed. It was a bit ridiculous to bet on this kind of thing. However, Yangchen's luck was really too good. Even a flying sword could make people hit it. Cheng Wenkai Taishaman could not lose unjustly. The two Yuanying stage ancestors of Taishaman snorted coldly and said nothing. Of course, they couldn't say anything. The result of this matter was not something they could control. Yang Chun, Elder Min, thought about it carefully and finally remembered where she had heard this familiar name. You are Shanshan's Dao companion, right? What? Hearing these words, all the Yuanying stage ancestors showed shocked expressions. At that time, when Yang Chun and Li Qingchun had a life and death challenge, only a few people heard what Shi Shanshan said at that time. However, the Jidan stage master in Taishaman did not report this to his sect. In his mind, it was just a joke. If even a joke had to be reported to the elders of his sect, wouldn't it seem that he was too immature? Later, things developed as the Jidan stage master expected. The matter of Yang Chun and Shi Shanshan's double cultivation never happened again, which made him more convinced that it was just a joke at that time. Of course, it was impossible for him to publicize this matter everywhere. It was not good for Yang Chun, but for the Green Jade Immortal Island. Therefore, apart from the two Yuanying stage masters of the Green Jade Immortal Island at that time, and a few people in the Chunyang Palace, no more people knew about it, and there were no rumors among the cultivators. But now, Min Huafeng of the Green Jade Immortal Island, Elder Min, actually asked about this matter. The nature was immediately different. The original rumor immediately became the truth. Few people didn't know what kind of person Shi Shanshan was. She was the genius disciple of the Green Jade Immortal Island, the future star who was vigorously cultivated. At a young age, her cultivation base had already gone straight to the Jidan stage. Such a disciple, if she wanted to find a Dao companion, even if she just casually released some news, it was estimated that the people in line could directly fill up the Green Jade Immortal Island. Such an excellent disciple already had a double cultivation Dao companion. Moreover, it was not a member of the Green Jade Immortal Island, but even a junior in the early foundation stage. Yang Chun had already planned not to mention this matter again. After a few years or more, no one would mention it again, but he did not expect that this matter would be known by elder men of the Green Jade Immortal Island. Obviously, this was a unified statement within the Green Jade Immortal Island, and even acquiesced to this matter. Otherwise, with the identity of elder men, she would not ask such a question. This, senior, there may be some misunderstanding in it. Yang Chun could only explain it in this way, and Gao Yu behind him was also anxious. She stepped forward and saluted. It was just a joke at the time. Senior must not take it seriously. What misunderstanding and joke? Elder Min waved her hand. If it is decided, then don't change it. Fellow Taoist Gue, I think, after going back, it is better to let the head of your sect come forward to manage it. Shanshan is my most beloved disciple. She can't be wronged. This sentence was directed at the old tree demon Gue Shanyu. On this occasion, the highest status and seniority in the Chunyang Palace was the old tree demon, with the identity of elder men, saying this also meant that the head of the Chunyang Palace, in any case, had to come forward and discuss a solution with the Green Jade Immortal Island. However, listening to the meaning of elder men, it seemed that the side of the Green Jade Immortal Island had already determined this matter, but Yang Chun was a little reluctant. Very sure of the Green Jade Immortal Island, that was a genius disciple who was known as the Golden Spirit Root Full Value. Dual cultivation with her was definitely a dream thing for cultivators. How could Yang Chun still be dissatisfied? Fool, such a good opportunity, you don't know how to grasp it. It was not known how many people secretly despised Yang Chun in their hearts. In the same way, there were also many masters who were envious of Yang Chen's good fortune. Soon, Someone reacted. If it was not dissatisfaction, then Yang Chun was a smart person. He understood his own weight and knew that he was not worthy of fairy sure, so he refused. If you think about it this way, it seems to explain a lot of things. When everyone looked at Yang Chun again, they also had a little more favorable impression. He had self-knowledge and heaven-defying luck, a very good junior. At this time, because of Lin Chang's matter, everyone still had a common hatred for the enemy. This matter was only mentioned by eldermen. How could everyone ask again? The most important thing of the moment was to tell the world that the demon Lin had been eliminated, so that all the Dao sects could rest assured. However, on the matter of how to announce it, everyone was a little embarrassed. It was true that the person was killed by Yang Chun, but he was just a junior in the foundation stage. He had lost 2 masters of the Deshang stage and more than a dozen Yuanying stage ancestors. If the masters who were harmed by the dragon embryo spirit cultivation secret art were counted, it was even more countless, but they were killed by the hands of a junior in the foundation stage. It seemed that the masters who participated in the siege were not good to hear. Naturally, it is the credit of the seniors. Yang Chun showed a very calm attitude at this time. Knowing when to advance and retreat, the seniors have forced him into a corner. Without this junior, he can't escape. The credit of eliminating the demon and defending the Dao is naturally the seniors. This junior only needs the seniors to prove that this junior has touched the hair of old demon Lin. Yang Chun's words caused a burst of friendly laughter. Yang Chun took the initiative to give up the credit. Even the Yuanying stage ancestors of Taishaman could not make things difficult for Yang Chun on this matter. You can rest assured that when this matter is over, this old man will let Chang Wenkai go to Chunyang Palace to honor the bet. Yang Chun knew what was good for him, and of course, the Yuanying stage ancestors also had a good attitude. The Yuanying stage ancestor of Taishaman immediately made a decision. Chapter 343. For Yang Chun, this trip to encircle and annihilate Devil Lin was simply a double gain in fame and fortune. No matter how Yang Chun evaded it in the end, in the final result, Yang Chun's name was still tied with those Deshang and nascent soul experts, although he was only ranked last. After all, they were experts with different moods. Apart from slightly weakening Yang Chun's credit because it didn't look good on their faces, they greatly publicized the contribution of old tree demon Gue Shanyu in Chunyang Palace this time. Gue Shanyu, the new hall master of the Hall of Eccentrics in Chunyang Palace, had not only accurately discovered Lin Chang's position, so that everyone could besiege the old devil, but also saved the lives of at least a dozen nascent soul experts at a critical moment. This kind of credit was absolutely top of the list. Yang Chun was a little less important, but in the end, the credit for killing Lin Changhe still belonged to Yang Chun. After all, no one among the nascent soul ancestors and Deshang experts could be so thick-skinned as to falsely claim Yang Chun's credit. Of course, the gain in fame was a trivial matter. What was really important was that Yang Chun's blood demon vine flying sword had truly become an emu flying sword after being sharpened by Lin Changhe, this super Deshang expert. It was also the one with the most potential among the flying swords that Yang Chun currently had, and even surpassed the Immortal beheading saber. However, the emu flying sword would eventually be one of the sword souls of the Immortal beheading saber, and the two would merge into one in the near future, so there was no need for Yang Chun to worry about the ranking. Another huge gain was Lin Changhe's Chinquan bag. Given the old devil's previous behavior, who knew how many good things had been exchanged for a large number of Heavenfall Heart crystals, all of which had been given to Yang Chun. Fame and fortune. This was the real meaning of fame and fortune. No one could gain more than Yang Chun. This was not to mention the other benefit that no one knew about except for Gue Shanyu. The reason why Gue Shanyu took the initiative to block the attack when Lin Changhe controlled the 2 masters of the Deshang stage to self-destruct was because of Yang Chun's instructions. Blocking the attack would give Gue Shanyu a good reputation, but it was also an opportunity for Gue Shanyu to collect all the pieces of flesh and bones. It was just that Gue Shanyu did it secretly, so no one noticed. Although their cultivation base has been absorbed by Lin Changhe, the 2 dead Deshang stage masters, after all, were still the Shang stage masters. Their flesh and blood were now the best tonic for the blood demon vine in Yang Chen's medicine garden, which had its taproot and main vine cut off by Yang Chen. These were all handed over to Yang Chen by the old tree demon afterward. Yang Chen sent the flesh and blood to the blood demon vine plant as soon as he got it. After a period of careful care, the blood phantom vine finally recovered a little vitality, no longer the kind of dying appearance. Perhaps after hundreds of years of growth, this broken blood demon vine could still grow to the appearance of its heyday. However, that was a long time in the future. Now Yang Chen just ensured that the blood phantom vine would not die, and other things will be talked about later. Anyway, Yang Chen already had the blood phantom vine flying sword, which could also be upgraded. The power was much greater than the original blood phantom vine. The only trouble was the matter of Shi Shanshan's dual cultivation companion, which made Yang Chen have a headache. Along with it, his master Gao Yu also frowned and was worried. This matter was not so easy to solve. Even Elder Min of the Green Jade Immortal Island has already spoken. It seemed that it was absolutely impossible to not let the head of the palace come forward. He originally thought that he could drag it on and let the incident pass. No one would talk about it anymore, but the people of the Green Jade Immortal Island seemed to be determined. He didn't know if it was to show that they also had the style of keeping their word, or if they had other plans. Anyway, the matter of Yang Chen and Shi Shanshan being a dual cultivation companion has been spread throughout the world, with the words of Elderman Yang Chen believed that in the near future, he would receive countless challenges from Shi Shanshan's admirers. It would also be a very troublesome thing in the future. It seemed that no one doubted whether Yang Chen had premeditated it. Otherwise, why would he bet with Cheng Wen Kai, as if he already knew the result? But no one could believe such a ridiculous thing. Did Yang Chen know where Cheng Wen Kai would escape? So he put the flying sword there, and was it a bet in advance? Compared with premeditation, everyone would rather believe in Yang Chen's heaven-defying luck. After all, for such a thing, those who knew what Yang Chen had done believed that Yang Chen's luck was amazing. Only things like luck could not be controlled by everyone. Even the masters of the Deshang stage could not control it. The unlucky Cheng Wen Kai, even now, did not know that he had already lost in a mess. Even the Yuanying stage elders of his sect did not stand on his side. When the incident was learned by the Yuanying stage ancestors of Taishaman, they could not wait to scold Cheng Wen Kai. The bet between the two sides turned out to be based on Cheng Wen Kai first ridiculing Yang Chen. Even the elders of Taishaman did not know what to say. After all, at that time, all the sects sent all their disciples. Cheng Wen Kai ridiculed Yang Chen, which was equivalent to ridiculing all the sections. If the matter was spread out, Taishaman would definitely be troubled by many sects. As a result, Cheng Wen Kai became a guy that even the elders felt was unable to do anything. As a Jidan stage master, making this kind of bet with a younger generation junior in the foundation stage was immature in itself. What's more, at the last Celestial Stairway gathering, it seemed that he questioned Yang Chen, and then lost at least 3 Jidan stage masters of Taishaman. It seemed that he could only return to the sect to clear up his misdeeds. Of course, the masters of Taishaman would not let Cheng Wen Kai kneel to Yang Chen and Gao Yu in front of so many people. After all, Taishaman still wanted to save face. This matter could only be resolved later, but it was impossible for them to deny it. If they had to blame someone, they could only blame Cheng Wen Kai for being too confident. He had already publicized this matter to everyone. Putting aside these small things, the big figures began to seriously sum up the lesson this time. The major sect also began to learn the practice of Chunyang Palace. One was to guard against this kind of demonic art, and the other was to learn the way Chunyang Palace set up a hall of eccentrics to attract monsters. Judging from the performance of Guai Shanyu this time, it was completely worth it. The real reward, according to merit, was the business of the big figures. Those Jidan stage and foundation stage disciples who came here could basically go back to the sect directly. Yang Chen and Gao Yu were no exception. They directly apologized to Guai Shanyu and returned to Meiqing Mountain. No matter how they compete for credit, Yang Chen must complete one thing first, the Emu flying sword that has been sharpened by the Deshang stage master. Chapter 344. On the way, he told Gao Yu what he was going to do. Returning to the Chunyang Palace's fierce sun courtyard, Yang Chun went directly into seclusion. Gao Yu went to her master Wang Yong worriedly and discussed with Wang Yong how to deal with the matter of Yang Chun and Shi Shan. Speaking of it, Gao Yu never knew why, when she heard Elderman ask if Yang Chun was Shi Shan's Tao companion. Gao Yu couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. It was an indescribable feeling. It was extremely uncomfortable, as if her beloved things had been taken away. Every time she had this feeling, Gao Yu would warn herself that she was the master of Yang Chun and she couldn't think about other things. It should be a happy thing for her apprentice to have an excellent Tao companion. No matter how hard she tried, Gao Yu couldn't be happy. It's just that Gao Yu couldn't share such contradictory emotions with anyone. She could only rot in her stomach alone. She was extremely sad. Yang Chun did not notice Gao Yu's emotional changes. Now his mind has been completely attracted by the Emu flying sword. The blood phantom vine flying sword, which has absorbed the flesh and blood of the Deshang stage, has now shown a perfect characteristic of the flying sword, waiting for Yang Chen's further improvement and completion of the final step. In the retreat room, Yang Chun carefully took out the blood phantom vine sword embryo and looked at the rippling blood color on it. He didn't know how to describe his happiness. This was the first magic weapon that Yang Chun personally refined, and it was also a component of the future flying sword. In his previous life, Yang Chun didn't even dare to think that the flying sword refined by the blood phantom vine could come from his own hands. If it weren't for the fact that the flying sword was in his hand, Yang Chun would have felt like he was dreaming. Pushing his divine sense to the maximum, Yang Chen's mind sank into a sea of consciousness. After the refinement of the sword embryo, it was unknown how many times larger it was. It was lying in the middle of Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, allowing Yang Chun to have a panoramic view of it from inside out. With the support of the huge spiritual power of fierce sun courtyard, Yang Chun manipulated the core fire and carefully refined the impurities in the blood phantom vine flying sword from the inside to the outside. These impurities appeared after absorbing Lin Changhe's flesh and blood. Lin Changhe's cultivation was impure to begin with. He had to rely on plundering other people's cultivation to advance, so it was normal for impurities to appear. But the perfect flying sword that Yang Chun wanted did not allow such impurities. Yang Chun could tolerate that the materials were not high enough. These could be made up for later and replaced with higher-grade materials, but Yang Chun could not tolerate such impurities. This would not only reduce the quality of the flying sword, but it would also be a hidden danger if the flying sword wanted to upgrade in the future. These were caused by the impure cultivation of Lin Changhe in the Deshang realm. Yang Chun had to spend a lot of time to slowly refine these impurities. This was not an overnight effort. Even for the current Yang Chun, it was a laborious thing. Fortunately, there was a mutated sea of consciousness that could easily enlarge the magic weapon countless times, so that Yang Chun could accurately find any tiny flaws and impurities. The refined spiritual awareness of the double cultivation played a powerful role, controlling the core fire, burning and refining the impurities bit by bit, but it would not hurt the sword embryo. With the removal of impurities, the blood phantom vine flying sword showed a kind of crazy and bloodthirsty momentum, constantly shaking in the sea of consciousness. Yang Chun was not neglectful. At this point, a series of secret techniques were made, leaving a spiritual power ripple on the flying sword embryo, forming a unique rune mark. When the last rune mark was formed, the blood demon vine flying sword exuded a dazzling red light. After the red light dissipated, the flying sword itself dimmed, and it was no longer the kind of blood color that made people afraid to look at it. The Emu flying sword was finally completed, with a beautiful handle and a long, single-sided blade. Although it was not a terrifying blood color, it was replaced by a thick black that seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. It was simple and elegant, but it hid a fierce aura under the surface, which made Yang Chun simply unable to put down. Looking from a distance, it seems that the fierceness of this flying sword can be found at a glance. But soon he would feel that he had an illusion. Yang Chen knew that this was because the flying sword had just been completed and the brilliance had not been completely restrained. With a move of his mind, the flying sword suddenly turned into a black dragon, which was very soft, and began to fly in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. This flying sword was a blood phantom vine. In addition to the blood-sucking characteristics of the blood phantom vine, it also retained the soft and tough body of the blood phantom vine. The flying sword in the air turned into a circle for a while and turned into a curved snake for a while. It was so easy that Yang Chen was overjoyed. He finally had a flying sword in his hand. Although the current level was not very high, from the perspective of development potential alone, this flying sword was many times stronger than the flying sword given to him by Wu Xiong. In the future, as long as Yang Chen's cultivation base improved, this flying sword could be upgraded without limit. In addition to the use of the earth core fire when removing impurities, Yang Chen has been using the Emu spirit power when refining this flying sword. After the flying sword was completed, his mind relaxed, and he suddenly found that his Emu spirit power had changed again. Originally, Yang Chen was only in the second level of the foundation stage, but now it was obvious that his spirit power was rising and it was hitting the limit of the next level. The experienced Yang Chen certainly knew that this was a sign that his cultivation base was about to break through again. He calmed down and guided it a few times. Suddenly, the invisible shackles disappeared quickly and the Emu spirit power rushed to the next level almost instantly. The Emu spirit power reached the third level of the foundation stage, and even the other spirit powers were ready to move. However, after all, it was not a big breakthrough. In Yang Chen's feeling, only all the other attributes of the spirit power had improved by half a level, but it had not reached the breakthrough state. Even so, it made Yang Chen quite happy. From the beginning of the foundation stage, consolidating the realm, and then promoted to the second and third level of the foundation stage, it had been 10 years. To be able to improve 2 levels in a short period of 10 years, it had made Yang Chen overjoyed. Cultivation was a down-to-earth thing. It was not something that could be improved immediately after comprehending a realm. Otherwise, Lin Changhe would not have died from the spirit power backlash in his previous life. According to this speed, Yang Chen could fully conclude that within 100 years, he would definitely be able to condense his core and enter the realm of the Jedon realm. This speed, in his previous life, Yang Chen did not dare to think about it. It was almost comparable to the cultivation speed of Gong Sunling. Thinking of Gong Sunling, Yang Chen suddenly reacted that it had been a full 10 years since Gong Sunling entered the Immortal Fallen Abyss, and it was time for Gong Sunling to come out. Chapter 345. As soon as Yang Chen came back, he rushed to refine the Yi wood flying sword. Now that the flying sword was completed, Yang Chen could finally make that request to his master. When she made the bet with Changwen Kai, Gao Yu also promised Yang Chen a condition. When Yang Chen killed Lin Changhe, he didn't directly mention it. Instead, he deliberately delayed it. He was afraid that Gao Yu couldn't accept it. Now that a few months had passed, Yang Chen estimated that his master had probably guessed what he wanted her to do. If he said it at this time, it would probably not cause such a big reaction. In this life, Yang Chen cared for Gao Yu so much that he couldn't even tolerate her being wronged. Even a matter of practicing the water attribute cultivation method needed to be guided in this way instead of being forced. When he asked to see Gao Yu again, Gao Yu was doing the final work of perfecting Yang Chen's flying sword. This flying sword took almost several years of Gao Yu's time. After returning from the 10,000 mountains and being rescued by Yang Chen, Gao Yu was immersed in refining the flying sword. If it hadn't been for the catastrophe of the demonic arts, she wouldn't have left at all. Wait for another 2 or 3 months. The flying sword can be completed. Gao Yu said happily when she saw Yang Chen. She glanced at Yang Chen, then asked with a smile, "What's the matter?" "Master promised me last time." Yang Chen replied with a smile. The flying sword was about to be completed. Yang Chen was also very happy. The long-awaited scene was about to be relived again. How could Yang Chen's mood not be excited? "What do you want me to do?" Gao Yu seemed to have guessed the purpose of Yang Chen's visit and asked directly, "Is it the request from last time? Let me practice the water attribute cultivation method." "Yes, Master." Gao Yu could take the initiative to ask it, indicating that she had already thought about this problem. Yang Chen was very happy. Letting her accept it step by step was also something he enjoyed. Gao Yu looked at Yang Chen's smiling face. After looking at him with a very complicated gaze for a long time, she nodded and said, "Okay, I am willing to gamble and accept my loss. In the words of your beautiful Tao companion, although I'm a woman, I also keep my word. If I promise you, I will do it." Listening to Gao Yu's words, Yang Chen couldn't help but smile bitterly. Gao Yu even began to tease him about Shi Shanshan. Alas, this matter was really a headache. He didn't know how the palace master would negotiate and how to solve it. It seemed that she liked to see Yang Chen's sad face. Gao Yu saw his appearance and smiled happily. "Go. When I refine your flying sword, I will start to practice the water attribute cultivation method." "Yes, Master, this disciple will prepare it right away." Yang Chen was overjoyed. Finally, Gao Yu promised to practice the water attribute cultivation method, and the big stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. The regrets of the previous life would never be repeated in this life. As long as Yang Chen existed for one day, he would never allow those things to happen. Now, everything seemed to be changing, and it was changing in the direction that Yang Chen expected. Although the change was not very big, life had deviated from the original track and would only move in a better direction. Now, everything seemed to be changing, and it was changing in the direction that Yang Chen expected. Although the change was not very big, life had already deviated from the original track, and it would only move in a better direction. "Master, did Cheng Wenkai come to Cao Master?" After solving the thing that Yang Chen was most concerned about, Yang Chen began to care about another issue. During the great calamity of the demonic cultivation, if it weren't for Cheng Wencai's ridicule, Yang Chen did not intend to be in the limelight. But since he had the reputation of killing Demon Lin, naturally, Cheng Wencai's bet had to be honored, and he was not allowed to renege on it. The Taishaman sent a message saying that they wanted Cheng Wencai to come and honor it. Gao Yu said slowly, "But when you were in retreat, I was also at the critical moment of refining the flying sword, so I temporarily postponed it." "Then let him come," Yang Chen said without hesitation. "If you are willing to bet, you must be willing to lose." On this point, the Taishamen have done a good job these few times, and they have the demeanor of a big sect. Although he praised like this, anyone could hear the meaning in it. "Yang Chen," Gao Yu suddenly called Yang Chen. "If you only have opinions about the Taishamen because of Li Qingchen, I advise you to dispel this idea. Li Qingchen is dead, and no one in the Taishamen will target you." Yang Chen's dissatisfaction with the Taishamen. How could Gao Yu, his master, not see it? She has now grasped Yang Chen's pulse. It seems that as long as it does not involve herself, under normal circumstances, Yang Chen is very easy to talk to. But as long as someone doesn't open their eyes and burns the fire of war on her, his master, Yang Chen will definitely go berserk and show no mercy. This discovery made Gao Yu have a very indescribable feeling, both happy and a little scared. Of course, she liked that Yang Chen cared about her, but she was afraid that Yang Chen had any feelings beyond the master and disciple relationship. After all, they were master and disciple. However, since the spiritual awareness double cultivation with Yang Chen, Gao Yu had an unspeakable expectation in her heart, although she was afraid that Yang Chen and she would go beyond the master and disciple relationship. She knew that this was not right, but when she heard about Shi Shanshan, she would still feel blocked in her heart, and it was very contradictory. The power of the Taishaman was great, and this was recognized by the Tao sects. Gao Yu did not want Yang Chen to provoke an enemy that he could not match because of her, which was not a good thing. "Is no one targeting me?" Yang Chen laughed. "Yang Lan has not appeared so far. Maybe he has just made his mark in the Taishaman, and has not yet reached a higher realm. At that time, who knows how Yang Lan will deal with him? Moreover, even if there is no Yang Lan, Yang Chen can't easily let go of the Taishaman. How can the hatred of the past life be given up because of Li Qingchen? Yeah. Looking at Yang Chen's appearance, Gao Yu knew that she had not convinced Yang Chen, but she would not say anything more. She just sighed and said, "You have to be careful in everything." "Don't worry, master." Yang Chen nodded. "This disciple knows it." The two no longer talked about this topic, but they both had a unanimous decision to let Cheng Wenkai come and fulfill his bet. When facing Yang Chen and Gao Yu, even Gao Yu was not happy with his face, otherwise she would not have agreed to the bet. Since he lost, he naturally had to fulfill it. The great calamity of the demonic arts had been passed. Yang Chen thought about it carefully. It seemed that in the next period of time, there would not be any major events that would affect all the cultivators. It was just the right time to use this time to cultivate carefully. In particular, it was the most important thing to let Gao Yu smoothly change her cultivation attribute. Yang Chen had not sorted out Lin Changhe's Qingquan bag well. If there was anything, he needed to throw it to Shanghai Feng and let him deal with it, as the welfare of the sect. After finishing his work on his master's side, Yang Chen went directly to Shang Wanfeng's territory. Chapter 346. On the side of the fierce sun courtyard, Shang Wanfeng had specially opened a small shop that looked like a grocery store. However, this small shop was now very famous in Chunyang Palace. Almost all the things inside were good, and they were 20% cheaper than the market price. It was almost the same as the benefits of the sect. There was an endless stream of people coming here every day. Junior Brother Yang is here. Good morning, Junior Brother Yang. Martial nephew, long time no see. When Yang Chen appeared, almost all the people he met greeted him with a smile. Everyone knew where the things in this shop came from, so they all smiled at Yang Chen, the owner of the goods. Yang Chen was also happy to maintain a good reputation in the sect, and it could also indirectly improve the strength of the sect. After greeting everyone with a smile, Yang Chen found Shanghai Feng. As soon as they met, Yang Chen was shocked by Shanghai Feng's state. After not seeing each other for a few years, Shanghai Feng's cultivation had improved significantly, which was completely different from the previous judgment of Yang Chen and Shanghai Feng. Senior apprentice brother, what kind of elixir did you eat? The first sentence of the meeting, Yang Chen asked in surprise. At that time, Yang Chen thought of providing a lot of elixir to Shanghai Feng to improve, but Shanghai Feng knew himself. He knew that even if he borrowed the power of elixir, he would only be below average and unable to break through, so he refused Yang Chen's kindness. But now, Shanghai Feng's situation was strange. Elixir? Shanghai Feng laughed and said, "If I wanted it, I would have accepted your kindness last time, junior brother." "Then this is?" Yang Chen pointed to Shanghai Feng. "I haven't congratulated senior brother on your great progress in cultivation." The last time he saw Shanghai Feng was only at the 3rd level of foundation establishment. Using the sky measuring ruler, he was very ordinary. But now it was obvious that Shanghai Feng had broken through to the middle stage of foundation establishment, at least 2 levels higher. This was not a situation that a person who had lost the heart to cultivate should show. Shanghai Feng was in a good mood, and it just so happened that he needed someone to talk to. He immediately ignored the business and pulled Yang Chen talk. Originally, Shanghai Feng was aware that his aptitude was poor, so he gave up refining and turned to take care of this shop. But what everyone didn't expect, including Shanghai Feng, was that he was like a fish in water when he invested in business, as if he was born to do it. With good conditions, Shanghai Feng was very comfortable in managing it. In addition, his pleasure was in managing these things. While everything was in good order, it also made him feel very happy. Unconsciously, his cultivation began to grow. When he noticed it, he had already improved by 1 level, even faster than when he concentrated on cultivation. After discovering this, Shang Wanfeng also felt strange for a while, but he quickly put this matter in the back of his mind and continued to concentrate on taking care of the business. Then, the result was that when Yang Chen came over, he had unknowingly improved to another level. In a short period of 6 or 7 years, Shanghai Feng could actually improve by 2 levels, from the 3rd level of foundation establishment to the 5th level of foundation establishment. This kind of cultivation speed, Even Yang Chun and Gong Sunling were a little ashamed. After listening to Shanghai Feng's explanation, Yang Chun immediately understood. Shanghai Feng was cultivating in another way. In fact, there was more than one way to cultivate. After the foundation establishment, as long as one could wholeheartedly devote themselves to a certain realm similar to cultivation, they could be improved. Some used zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Some used to eliminate evil and defend the Tao. Some used refining and alchemy, and so on. In short, they found something they liked and devoted themselves to it. In this case, Shanghai Feng obviously liked this way of doing business, so he devoted himself to it, so there was such a change. It was a good thing to be able to find a suitable way. It was a great blessing to be able to find it when he was in the foundation establishment stage. Shanghai Feng's decisive decision to turn to managing the business was definitely a wise move. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such an opportunity. Congratulations, senior brother. After Yang Chun explained all this, he smiled and congratulated. It turns out that senior brother has found his own way. Shanghai Feng didn't expect that he would run into such a great luck one day. He was a little silly and finally patted the back of his head happily and laughed at himself. It turns out that I am a businessman. After knowing this, Shanghai Feng was overjoyed. Since there was such an opportunity, he also regained his confidence in cultivation. Yang Chun was also happy to see his friend have such a breakthrough, so he simply generously supported him. Senior brother, I still have some things here. Come have a look. With that, Yang Chun took out the Chinquan bag that he had snatched from Lin Changhe and took out the things one by one. The two were now in a separate room with a small restriction, so others didn't know what was going on inside. Yang Chun was not afraid of being seen by others when he took out the things. Yang Chun hadn't sorted out Lin Changhe's things, so at this time, he and Shanghai Feng were sorting them out. Lin Changhe used the heavenly meteorite heart crystal to exchange for a lot of things. Yang Chun didn't need them, so he just gave them to Shanghai Feng. Some ordinary materials were handed over by Yang Chun one by one, leaving only a few precious materials. After checking the rest, they were handed over to Shanghai Feng. It had to be said that Lin Changhe, this guy, had a short time arise and didn't get any good things at all. Most of them were ordinary materials, except to enrich the goods of Shanghai Feng. There was no other use. Junior brother, the things you brought back in the past few years have been exchanged for a total of. After the handover, Shanghai Feng began to report to Yang Chun the results of these years and the harvest of spirit stones. These things belonged to Yang Chun, and Shanghai Feng didn't seem to have any intention of occupying them. Maybe senior brother should go and be the shopkeeper of Chinchou Pavilion. Yang Chun looked at Shanghai Feng's serious expression and couldn't help but say with a smile. As the two of them were talking, suddenly, between heaven and earth, there was a burst of joy and excitement, and at the same time, an incomparably majestic aura appeared. In the sky, a huge lotus suddenly bloomed, and it didn't disperse for a long time. Immediately, a white light appeared in the sky, shooting straight to a certain place, and then the white light dissipated, and there was no more strange scene. The strange scene made all the cultivators present raise their heads and look at the strange scene in the sky. No one knew what was going on. This is someone ascending in broad daylight. When Yang Chun saw this scene, he immediately understood, and he suddenly had a kind of understanding in his heart. This is Elder Wu Xiong finally ascending. Chapter 347. Elder Wu Xiong's strength had already reached the realm of ascension, but because of the unfinished business, he did not ascend. The situation just now was that he used his unusually strong cultivation base to directly pass the wind tribulation and then ascended in the daytime. When a Yuaning stage master was promoted to the Deshang stage and passed the Yin fire tribulation, it could trigger the fluctuations of vitality within hundreds of miles. As long as it was a cultivator, it could be detected. And the ascension of a Deshang stage master made almost everyone in the world aware of the abnormality. Those who have lived for a long time and experienced people's ascension naturally knew what was going on, and those who have never experienced it naturally did not know what this situation was. However, What shocked everyone was that it usually took a very long time to pass through the wind tribulation. It was abnormally arduous, but Elder Wu Xiong seemed to be able to do it effortlessly. The first thing that came to everyone's mind was the heaven-seizing pill. It was no secret that Elder Wu Xiong refined the heaven-seizing pill, and Yang Chun became famous because of that incident. It was just that Elder Wu Xiong had not ascended, so everyone did not know whether this heaven-seizing pill was really successfully refined or not. Several people who participated in the refining at the beginning were also very secretive and avoided talking about it. No one could verify it. Now that Elder Wu Xiong ascended in the daytime, and it was so fast, it has fully demonstrated that the heaven-seizing pill not only did not fail, but it played an important role. Only Yang Chun and Gao Yuang Yong knew that it was not the case at all. When refining the heaven-seizing pill, during the pill tribulation, Wu Xiong had helped the heaven-seizing pill withstand the last few violent wind tribulations. Elder Wu already had sufficient knowledge and experience regarding the characteristics of the violent wind tribulations, so he had been able to pass it so easily. Unfortunately, not everyone thought so. The generally accepted view was the powerful effect of the heaven-seizing pill. For a time, all kinds of opinions were rampant, but the core focus was on Elder Wu's ascension and the heaven-seizing pill. Elder Wu's ascension also made the cultivation experience that he had left to Yang Chun more precious, especially the records of the Yuanying stage to the Deshang stage and the Deshang stage to the Ascension stage. The head of the palace did not want to think about it and directly stored this part of the content in the secret pavilion of the Chunyang Palace, and non-core elders could not watch it. Following Elder Wu's ascension, Yang Chen's name was once again mentioned. Of course, at the same time, several alchemists who had participated in refining the heaven-seizing pill and beast tamer Shirshan were also mentioned. However, in terms of fame, it was Yang Chun who had the lowest cultivation. To Yang Chun, Elder Wu's ascension also meant that Yang Chun would lose a strong backing in the mortal world. At the very least, he would not have Elder Wu to support him in the future. Fortunately, Yang Chun had already sold a favor to Elder Hua of the Blue Cloud sect in advance, and there was also Gue Shanyu of the Deshang stage on the side of Chunyang Palace. But the impact on Yang Chun was not great. Along with the ascension of Elder Wu, who appeared in front of Yang Chun, was his senior apprentice sister Gong Sunling, who had been in the Immortal Falling Abyss for 10 years. She just came out of the Immortal Falling Abyss and went straight to the Fierce Sun Courtyard. After meeting her master, she heard that Yang Chun was here and immediately chased after him. Senior apprentice sister, Yang Chun was pleasantly surprised. The Gong Sunling in front of him was completely different from the Gong Sunling in his memory of his previous life. There was a huge change in temperament alone. In terms of cultivation base, for the time being, Gong Sunling was still similar to Yang Chun in the early stage of the foundation stage, but she already had an indomitable momentum from the battle. I came out of the Immortal Falling Abyss. Gong Sunling's face was full of happiness. The slight smile could not hide her confident expression. It was obvious that there was a kind of vicissitudes and perseverance after experiencing the battle. She was no longer the ascetic cultivator in Yang Chen's memory, who only knew how to immerse herself in bitter cultivation. Senior apprentice sister has worked hard. Yang Chen looked at the changes in Gong Sunling, and he was also happy for her. Only after going through tempering could one truly obtain an improvement. Immersing oneself in the spiritual vein and having no combat experience, not to mention the difficulty of crossing the tribulation. Even if one succeeded in ascending, one would still be the object of bullying in the spiritual world. I heard about your things. Gong Sunling was obviously very concerned about Yang Chun. As soon as she came out of the Immortal Falling Abyss, she inquired about Yang Chen's affairs. After saying this, Gong Sunling seemed to suddenly change her expression on her face. She said with a smile, "I heard that the fairy shore of the Green Jade Immortal Island is unparalleled. Junior apprentice brother, your luck with women is not shallow." Yang Chen couldn't help but let out a groan from his heart. Why did everyone have to tell him about this? His master was like this. Even his senior apprentice sister was like this. On the contrary, The reaction of those fellow apprentices was not very strong. And what surprised Yang Chun was that the tone of Gong Suanling's senior apprentice sister was obviously unhappy. At this moment, Yang Chun even had the heart to die. It was not voluntary for him. Why did everyone talk to him in such a tone? That was a misunderstanding. Yang Chun had no choice but to explain with a bitter face. The head of the palace is negotiating. I hope that the Green Jade Immortal Island can give up the original intention. You don't want to? Gong Suanling's eyebrows were raised, but her tone was obviously eased, and there was a little surprise in it. I said, that was a misunderstanding. Yang Chun could only smile bitterly again. Everyone thought that he had taken advantage of a big advantage. Who knew the pain in his heart? Since you don't want to, then refuse. Gong Suanling nodded with satisfaction, patted Yang Chen's shoulder, and comforted him. Her face restored a smile. Do you think I don't want to? Yang Chun glanced at Gong Suanling, causing her to laugh like a silver bell. In any case, Gong Suanling was very satisfied with Yang Chen's attitude. She no longer entangled on this issue, but was very happy to tell Yang Chun and Shangwan Feng about her experience in the Immortal Fallen Abyss, what risks she experienced, what experiences she learned. No matter how big or small, it seemed that she wanted to share her experience with Yang Chun. Yang Chun and Shangwan Feng listened quietly, but Yang Chun soon left. When someone came to do business, Shangwan Feng directly used this excuse to leave, leaving only 2 people in the room. Gong Suanling seemed to have not talked to people for 10 years. She kept talking to Yang Chun and described the role of the medicinal pills that Yang Chun refined for her. She was beaming with joy. Of course, Yang Chun would not disturb the interest of Gong Suanling. He listened quietly until she said everything she wanted to say in one breath. After saying this, Gong Suanling seemed to have put down the worries in her heart. Her jade hand patted her chest and said happily, "Wow, it's really comfortable to say it in one breath." After that, regardless of Yang Chen's reaction, she asked directly, "Junior brother Yang, didn't you say that when I come back, you will teach me a powerful illusion array?" Chapter 348. Gong Suanling didn't know when she became an impatient person. However, Yang Chen didn't care about this. It was fine as long as Gong Suanling was happy. The higher her cultivation was, the more powerful the Chunyang Palace would be. Anyway, the illusory matrix that Yang Chen said was also within the scope of Meiqing Mountain. Yang Chen didn't mind taking Gong Suanling with him, but he still told her on the way that it was best to greet her master and the people who needed to be greeted. Cultivation was not to be emotionless, nor was it to learn to be a small country with few people. It was still necessary to know the necessary ways of the world. For Yang Chen's advice, Gong Suanling nodded and remembered it. It seemed that her master had also said these words to her, but Gong Suanling didn't listen to them. However, Yang Chen's words could make Gong Suanling remember them. Yang Chen didn't notice this. He took Gong Suanling straight to the place where the senior who found the immortal cutting saber was in retreat. There doesn't seem to be anything special here. Gong Suanling looked around and didn't find any trace of the illusory matrix. She couldn't help frowning. Yang Chun, did you remember the wrong place? Unconsciously, Gong Suanling had changed the way she addressed Yang Chun. She no longer formally called him junior fellow apprentice, but directly called him by his name. In this regard, Yang Chun didn't care. Anyway, his friends called him by his name directly, and the same was true for Gong Suanling. For Gong Suanling's doubt, Yang Chun didn't open his mouth to explain. Instead, he turned his head and smiled at her, taking a step forward. In an instant, Yang Chen's figure disappeared in front of Gong Suanling without a trace, and there was no movement around. Gong Suanling's eyes widened on the spot, watching this magical scene. Even though she was an array cultivator herself, she couldn't help but be amazed by this kind of illusion array that was set up without any trace. Carefully following Yang Chen's steps, Gong Suanling took a step forward. The scenery in front of her suddenly changed, and she appeared in a completely unfamiliar place. Next to her was Yang Chun, who had a faint smile on his face. He seemed to be waiting to see her shocked expression. Amazing! It was because she was also an array cultivator that Gong Sunling could understand the power of this illusory array. Such a large valley was completely concealed by this illusion array, and no one was able to discover it. Furthermore, even if one were to pass by, one would not be able to detect the existence of the illusion formation. The person who set up the formation was definitely an expert. This is the seclusion place of a senior of our sect. Yang Chun did not hide anything from Gong Sunling. He brought Gong Sunling to the tomb of that senior to pay his respects. Seeing the stone tablet erected by Yang Chun, Gong Sunling did not seem to be surprised. She just respectfully paid her respects. After everything was done, she got up and sighed to Yang Chun. No wonder everyone is amazed at your good luck. The ladder to heaven is not afraid of the illusion. You can meet Elder Wu when you enter the Immortal Fallen Abyss. Even when you go to the Blue Cloud sect, you can make friends with a master of the Deshang stage. Now I believe it. Even such a secret place can be found. How can it be possible without heaven-defying luck? In the eyes of Gong Sunling, this must be Yang Chun accidentally bumped into it. Otherwise, it could not be explained at all. In this regard, Yang Chun did not intend to explain. Anyway, everyone knew that Yang Chun's luck was good. This was also a manifestation of good luck. This illusion formation was enough for Gong Sunling to study for a long time. After remembering the location here, the two quickly returned to the Chunyang Palace. Gong Sunling was not a person who did not listen to people's advice. She did not return to the Chunyang Palace for 10 years. At least she had to come back to fulfill the etiquette of a disciple. Except for Fairy Sure of the Green Jade Immortal Island, which was a little troublesome, it seemed that Yang Chun had been smooth sailing these days. Whether it was the great tribulation of the demonic art or the refining of the Emu flying sword, it was completely developed according to Yang Chen's plan. His master and Gong Sunling had changed in this life. Yang Chen suddenly felt that everything he had planned was worth it. In a good mood, Yang Chun began to quietly wait for the bright ray sword to come out, and at the same time, he was also waiting for Chung Wenkai of the Taishaman to come and exchange the bet. At that time, in order to ridicule Yang Chun, Chung Wenkai did not hesitate to publicize the bet, but he did not expect that in the end, he had to kowtow to Yang Chen's Gao Yu, and it was also known to the world. It was because of such a big uproar that it was impossible for the Taishaman to reconcile with the Chunyang Palace in private. The Taishaman were powerful, but they had also attracted the dissatisfaction and jealousy of many other sections. How could they allow this thing that could make the Taishaman lose face to pass quietly? Previously, Chunyang Palace delayed some time on the grounds that Gao Yu and Yang Chun were both in retreat, so that the Taishaman also saw some hope and were very satisfied with the Chunyang Palace. Anyway, several elders at the top level had made a decision. Chung Wenkai still had a kowtow, but he could cash the bet in a secret situation. Unexpectedly, Elder Wu Xiong's ascension and the performance of the heaven-seizing pill made Yang Chun the focus of the cultivators again. Therefore, the bet that Chung Wenkai lost was also mentioned. There was a group of people who seemed to want to take this opportunity to get to know Yang Chun and make the whole thing uproar. Even if the Taishaman and Chunyang Palace wanted to keep a low profile, it was impossible. The matter of Chung Wenkai kowtowing to Gao Yu and Yang Chun in a secret corner was stirred up by a group of people, and it had to be done in public. After hearing the news, Chung Wenkai almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Among the setbacks he had suffered in his life, there was no one worse than the two setbacks he suffered from Yang Chun. The first time made his Jindan stage directly fall to the Foundation Establishment stage, and the other time made him lose his reputation from then on, and he could no longer raise his head in front of the cultivators. The cultivators respected the heaven and the earth. Among the heaven and the earth, the emperor and the master, they even did not respect the emperor. They only kowtowed to the heaven and the earth. It was rare for them to kowtow to some dead people. The so-called death was the most important thing. But a Jindan stage master kowtowed to a disciple in the Foundation Establishment stage of another sect. If it was the disciple in the Foundation Establishment stage who had poor aptitude but high seniority, it would be fine. But Yang Chun was a junior of the younger generation. How could Chung Wenkai bear it? However, If it wasn't for Chung Wen-Sai's aggressiveness at the beginning, how could Yang Chen make such a bet with him? But he couldn't blame others. Now the matter had become so big that it was beyond Chung Wen-Kai and Taishiman's control. Even if Chunyang Palace now offered not to honor the bet, it was impossible. Others would definitely say that Chunyang Palace was under the pressure of Taishiman. As a last resort, Taishiman could only let Chung Wen-Kai solve his own trouble. Chung Wen-Kai almost set foot on the road to Chunyang Palace with the heroic mood of a warrior who would never return. In his heart, his anger was full of flames. Such a great shame could not be erased even if he cut Yang Chun and Gao Yu into pieces. Under the eyes of the public, Chung Wen-Kai could not do anything, but Chung Wen-Kai had vowed that after this insult, he would never let Yang Chun and Gao Yu live.